Level 1. The infinite reflection. Paradox. Imagine standing between two mirrors, facing an endless tunnel of reflections. No matter how closely you look, the reflections continue infinitely, smaller and smaller, fading into the unknown. But here's the paradox. If reflections are just light bouncing back, then where does the final reflection go? Does it ever truly end, or is there an unreachable infinity hidden within the glass? The infinite reflection paradox plays with the idea of endless repetition, yet no one can ever see the final reflection. If each reflection is just a copy of the previous one, then how can infinity exist within something as simple as a mirror? The mind struggles to grasp this, because infinity itself is an abstract concept, one we can imagine but never fully experience. But the paradox doesn't stop there. What happens when you move? Your reflection moves instantly, but if each copy is just a projection of light, does every version of you also experience motion at the same time? If so, are these copies separate from you, or are they just an illusion of physics? And if they are illusions, then how can something unreal seem so real? Some theories suggest that our perception of reality is similar to an infinite mirror, our consciousness reflecting itself over and over in layers we cannot see. Could it be that our entire sense of self is just an endless loop, much like the mirror's reflections? What if every thought you have is just another reflection in the vast hall of your mind? But here's where things get truly strange. If reflections only exist when someone observes them, does that mean they vanish when no one is looking? If reality functions like this paradox, then how much of what we see is actually real? And if you were to step into the mirror, into that infinite tunnel, would you find another version of yourself waiting at the other end? Or would you simply disappear, lost in an eternity of light and illusion? This is the infinite reflection paradox. The question of where infinity begins and ends, trapped inside something as simple as a mirror. Level 2. The dream. Within a dream, paradox. You wake. Up in your bed, feeling the weight of the real world settling in. The dream you just had starts to fade, slipping away like sand through your fingers. But then, something strange happens. A sudden realization. Something is off. The world around you bends ever so slightly, and in a heartbeat, you wake up again. The bed is the same, the room is familiar, but now you're unsure. Was that first awakening real? Or are you still trapped inside another layer of the dream? This is the dream. Within a dream paradox, a mind-bending experience where the boundaries between reality and illusion dissolve into an endless cycle. The more you try to wake up, the deeper you seem to fall. It's as if reality itself becomes an illusion, and you are stuck in a maze with no clear exit. But here's the real paradox. If you can experience multiple awakenings, how do you ever know when you've truly woken up? Some scientists suggest that our perception of reality is no different from a dream. When we sleep, our brain creates entire worlds out of nothing, places, people, and stories that feel just as vivid as waking life. But if our senses can be fooled so easily, what proof do we have that we aren't dreaming right now? Could life itself be nothing more than an elaborate illusion? A dream within a dream that never ends? Philosophers like René Descartes have questioned this very idea, asking, what if all of existence is just a dream from which we never wake? If we only trust what our mind tells us, then what happens when the mind itself is deceived? This paradox forces us to confront an unsettling question. If we wake up from a dream and think we're in reality, how can we ever be sure? Perhaps the scariest part is that some people have reported waking up 5, 10, even 20 times before finally reaching reality. Each layer felt as real as the last. But what if they never truly woke up? What if they simply landed in another layer, one that only feels real because it's the closest thing to waking life they've ever known? The dream within a dream paradox is more than just a strange sleep phenomenon. It's a question that shakes the very foundation of our existence. If waking up doesn't guarantee reality, then how do we ever know when the dream truly ends? Level 3. The looping memory. Paradox. Imagine you suddenly remember something, but instead of it being a normal memory, it feels like a loop, repeating over and over again. You try to trace it back, but every time you do, you realize that the memory itself has no clear origin. It just exists, cycling infinitely with no starting point and no way to escape. This is the looping memory paradox, a strange phenomenon where thoughts, dreams, or even reality itself seem to replay endlessly, making you question whether you are remembering something real or simply trapped in a mental loop with no exit. Think about déjà vu, the eerie sensation that you've experienced a moment before, even though you logically know you haven't. Some scientists believe this could be a small glitch in the brain, where a memory is mistakenly processed twice, making it feel like a repeat. But what if the loop never stops? What if your mind continues to replay the same thought, dream, or moment indefinitely, trapping you in an infinite cycle? Some people report experiencing dreams that restart the moment they end, forcing them to relive the same events repeatedly. Others describe memories that resurface at random, but with no clear connection to any real event. If a memory loops infinitely with no clear beginning, can it even be considered real? Or is it just an illusion of the mind, a trick designed to make you believe in something that never truly happened? Even in waking life, time itself can feel like a loop. Have you ever felt like you were stuck in a pattern, repeating the same actions, thinking the same thoughts as if nothing ever changes? The more you focus on it, the more it seems to spiral, creating the unsettling feeling that you're trapped in an endless repetition. But if you can never find the starting point, how do you break free? The looping memory. Paradox forces us to confront an unsettling truth. If our memories can loop with no clear origin, how do we know which ones are real? What if time itself is nothing more than a series of repeating cycles, and we are simply caught in the illusion of moving forward? And if you suddenly wake up from this loop, would you even realize it? Or would you just be entering another cycle, thinking it's the first time all over again? Level 4. The Forgotten Thought Paradox. Have you ever been on the verge of saying something, only for the thought to suddenly vanish? It was there just a second ago, clear, fully formed, but now it's gone, slipping away like smoke in the wind. You try to trace it back, rewinding your mind, but the more you chase it, the further it fades. This is the forgotten thought paradox. If a thought disappears before you can express it, did it ever truly exist? Think about it. Your brain formed the idea. Your consciousness was aware of it. Yet the moment it escapes your grasp, it feels as if it was never real. Where did it go? Did it simply dissolve into nothingness? Or is it still lingering somewhere, buried deep within the subconscious, waiting to be recalled? If thoughts can exist for only a fleeting moment and then be lost forever, how many ideas have you forgotten without ever knowing? The human mind processes thousands of thoughts per day, but only a fraction make it into conscious awareness. Some thoughts disappear so quickly that you don't even register them. Others seem important at first, but fade before they can be acted upon. But here's the paradox. If you forget a thought entirely, how do you even know it was ever there? Some people describe the sensation of a thought being on the tip of the tongue, hovering just outside their reach. It feels real, yet it remains inaccessible. It's like a ghost of an idea, present but untouchable. What if every forgotten thought still exists somewhere in your mind, locked away in an unreachable space? Could the brain be filled with unspoken words, unrealized ideas, and lost moments that will never surface again? And then there's the even stranger possibility. What if forgetting a thought means it was never real to begin with? If something exists only in your mind and then vanishes without a trace, was it ever truly part of reality? Or is consciousness just a fleeting stream of illusions where only the things we manage to hold on to become real? Perhaps at this very moment, you've already forgotten another thought, one that could have changed everything. But if you can't remember it, Does it matter? Or is the real mystery how much of yourself is made up of things you'll never remember at all? Level 5. The Mirror Identity. Paradox: you stand in front of a mirror, staring at your own reflection. It moves when you move, blinks when you blink, and mimics your every action perfectly. But here's the paradox. If everything about your reflection is identical to you, does that mean it has an identity of its own? Or is it simply an illusion, an empty version of you, existing only because you are looking at it? Consider this. If your reflection was conscious, would it see you as its reflection? If it is doing exactly what you do, then in a way, it is just as real as you are. But if you were to walk away, it would cease to exist. This means its entire existence depends on your presence. But does that also mean your identity depends on something external? If what you see in the mirror is only a reversed version of yourself, then which one is truly you, the person standing in front of the mirror or the one looking back? Now take this a step further. Imagine you walk up to a two-way mirror, one, where you can see yourself, but someone on the other side can see through it. To them, you exist, but your reflection does not. Your identity, in this case, changes based on perspective. But if identity is based on perspective, does that mean it's never fixed? Some theories even suggest that consciousness itself is like a mirror, reflecting thoughts, emotions, and perceptions back at itself. If that's the case, then are you truly an independent being, or are you just a reflection of your environment, shaped by the world around you? And if a mirror can copy your every move without having a mind of its own, how can you be sure that your own actions aren't just reflections of something even deeper? Perhaps in the end, identity is not something fixed, but something constantly shifting, like the reflection in a mirror, always there, yet never truly tangible. Level 6. The Vanishing Object. Paradox: you place your keys on the table, turn around for a second, and when you look back, they're gone. You search frantically, retracing your steps, questioning your own memory. But here's where it gets strange. If the object was there just a moment ago, where did it go? Did it truly disappear? Or did reality itself shift in a way that removed it from existence? This is the vanishing object paradox. The idea that if something can exist one moment and be gone the next without explanation, then how can we be certain of anything we perceive? We rely on our senses to tell us what's real, but what if they can deceive us? Think about the way your brain processes information. Every second, it filters out unnecessary details, filling in gaps with assumptions. If you leave a room and come back, you expect everything to be exactly where you left it. But what if your brain simply assumes that, rather than actually verifying it? This could mean that objects don't actually vanish. We just fail to perceive them. Some scientists even suggest that reality itself isn't as solid as we believe. Quantum physics tells us that particles can exist in multiple states at once and only take a definite form when observed. If observation determines existence, at a microscopic level, could the same be true for objects in our everyday world? Could something momentarily cease to exist simply because we're not looking at it? Then there's the question of memory. Sometimes we misplace things without realizing it. But if your memory of placing an object is vivid and detailed and yet the object isn't there, then which is more real? The memory or the present reality? If reality can contradict memory, then which one should we trust? Perhaps the true paradox isn't that objects disappear, but that our perception of reality is never as stable as we believe. And if something can vanish from sight, what's stopping? Entire moments, experiences, or even people from slipping out of existence without us ever knowing? Level 7. The Changing Past. Paradox memories are supposed to be fixed, unchanging records of the past, snapshots of reality preserved in our minds. But what if your memories aren't as reliable as you think? What if the past itself can shift, subtly altering in ways you don't even notice? This is the changing past paradox. If you remember an event differently than how it actually happened, then which version is the real past? Think about this. You and a friend recall the same moment from years ago, but your memories don't match. Maybe you remember a conversation that they insist never happened. Maybe you recall a childhood event with different details than your parents do. In these cases, whose memory is correct? And if the past is supposed to be unchangeable, why do our recollections of it differ? Studies show that every time you recall a memory, your brain rewrites it. This means your memories aren't stored like files on a computer. They are reconstructed every time you access them. But if your brain is constantly altering the past, how can you trust that what you remember is accurate? If each recollection changes the details slightly, then, over time, could your entire past become something different from what actually happened? Now, take this idea to a larger scale. What if history itself isn't fixed? There are documented cases of people misremembering historical facts, entire groups recalling details that never actually happened. This is known as the Mandela effect, named after people who incorrectly remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison, even though he didn't. But if large groups can misremember the same thing, could that mean the past is somehow malleable? Even stranger, what if the act of remembering actually changes the past? In quantum physics, some experiments suggest that observing a system can alter its state, not just in the present, but retroactively in time. If this is true, then what's stopping your memories from influencing the past itself? Could the reality you remember be different from the reality that once existed? And if the past can change, whether in your mind or in reality, then how can you ever be certain of what was real? Maybe history isn't a straight line, but a constantly shifting illusion, rewriting itself each time we try to remember. Level 8. The repeating reality. Paradox. Imagine waking up one day, going through your entire routine, brushing your teeth, eating breakfast, stepping outside, only to realize you've done it all before. But not just once, over and over again. The day resets, events play out identically, and no matter what you do, reality keeps looping. But here's the paradox. If reality repeats exactly the same way, how do you even know it's happening? This is the repeating reality paradox. The idea that if we were stuck in an endless cycle of repeating events, we might never realize it. Think about dreams. Sometimes you have a dream that feels eerily familiar, as if you've experienced it before. But what if reality itself is structured the same way? What if time isn't linear but cyclical, repeating infinitely without us noticing? Some theories suggest that the universe itself could be caught in a cosmic loop. According to the Big Bounce theory, the universe might expand, collapse, and re-expand in an endless cycle, meaning everything, including your existence, could have happened before, an infinite number of times. But if that's true, is each cycle identical, or do small changes accumulate over time? Now, let's go deeper. If reality repeats, but your memory resets each time, then how would you ever detect it? What if déjà vu, the eerie feeling that you've experienced something before, is actually a glitch, a brief moment where your mind remembers a past cycle? Could it be that reality isn't just moving forward, but constantly circling back on itself? And if time is stuck in a loop, what does that mean for free will? If everything that happens has already happened before, are your choices truly your own, or are you just playing out a script written by the universe? Maybe the real paradox isn't that reality repeats, it's that we may never know if it does. Level 9. The inconsistent. Time paradox. Time is supposed to be constant, moving in one direction, second by second, unchanging. But what if time itself is unstable? What if the past, present, and future don't exist in a fixed order, but shift and rearrange unpredictably? This is the inconsistent time paradox. The idea that if time isn't stable, then reality itself might not be as solid as we think. Consider the way time sometimes feels different to us. When you're bored, a single minute can feel like an eternity. But when you're having fun, hours can pass in what feels like seconds. If time was truly consistent, wouldn't it always feel the same? Scientists have discovered that time isn't actually fixed. It can stretch and contract depending on speed and gravity. Einstein's theory of relativity tells us that time moves slower for objects moving at high speeds. This means that if you traveled near the speed of light, you could experience minutes while someone on Earth experiences years. But if time can be stretched, does that mean it can also be broken? Imagine a reality where time doesn't move forward at a constant rate, but speeds up and slows down randomly. Maybe sometimes the future happens before the past, or maybe time skips moments entirely. If time isn't a straight line, but something fluid and unpredictable, then how can we ever be sure what moment we're truly in? And if time is inconsistent, then does it really exist at all? Maybe past, present, and future aren't separate at all. Maybe they're just illusions created by our minds to make sense of chaos. If that's true, then what does it mean to exist in time at all? Perhaps the true paradox isn't time itself, but the fact that we assume it should be stable when, in reality, it might be anything but. Level 10. The reverse causality. Paradox: we believe that cause comes before effect, that you light a match before a fire burns, that you speak before words are heard. But what if that's not always true? What if sometimes the effect happens before the cause? This is the reverse causality paradox, the unsettling idea that events in reality don't always follow a logical sequence. Imagine dropping a glass, only to see it shatter before it even touches the ground. Or what if you suddenly felt pain in your hand, and then, a moment later, you touched a hot stove? If an effect happens before the cause, then how can we determine what caused it at all? In the world of quantum mechanics, some experiments suggest that actions taken in the present can influence the past. In delayed choice quantum eraser experiments, particles behave differently depending on whether they are observed, even if the decision to observe them is made after they've already traveled. This means the outcome is somehow decided retroactively, as if the present is rewriting the past. Now, imagine this applied to everyday life. What if you woke up one morning and found a book open on your desk, only to remember later that night that you had placed it there? Did the book being open cause you to move it, or did you move it because it was already there? If time doesn't always move forward, could it mean that the past isn't as fixed as we assume? The paradox deepens when you consider free will. If the future can affect the past, then are your choices truly yours? Or are they just consequences of events that haven't even happened yet? Maybe reality isn't a chain of events moving forward, but an intricate web where past, present, and future are all connected in ways we don't yet understand. And if cause and effect can be reversed, then how can we ever be sure which came first? Level 11. The observer's existence paradox. You wake up, open your eyes, and see the world around you. But here's the question. Does the world exist because you are observing it, or do you exist because the world is there to observe? This is the observer's existence paradox, the unsettling idea that observation and existence might be fundamentally linked. In quantum physics, the famous double-slit experiment showed that particles behave differently depending on whether or not they are observed. When unobserved, they exist in a state of probability, acting as waves, but the moment they are measured, they behave like solid particles. This means that, in some way, observation determines reality. But if observation creates reality, then what happens when you're not looking? Does the world still exist when you close your eyes? Does a room remain unchanged when no one is inside it? Or does reality only take form when someone is there to perceive it? Think about it another way. If no one is around to hear a tree fall, does it still make a sound? Or does sound only exist when there's an observer to hear it? If a world exists without anyone to see it, then how can we ever be sure of what's real? Now take this to the extreme. If observation creates existence, then what about before you were born? Did reality exist before you came into consciousness? And if you cease to observe it, when you sleep, when you lose awareness, does it cease to exist until you wake up? Perhaps reality isn't something external at all. Perhaps it only exists because we are here to witness it. And if that's true, then what happens when there's no one left to observe? Level 12. The Time Travel Observer. Paradox Imagine You. Invent a time machine and decide to travel back in time to witness a historic event. Let's say, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. You arrive, hide in the shadows, and observe everything unfold exactly as history recorded. But here's the question. Were you always there? This is the Time Travel Observer paradox. The idea that if you travel to the past and observe an event, then your presence must have already been part of history. But if that's the case, then was history ever truly independent of you? Or did your decision to observe it somehow influence what was always meant to happen? Now let's take this deeper. Suppose you witness a mysterious figure in a historical event only to later realize it was you all along. If you were always there, then did you ever have a choice? Did you actually travel back in time? Or was your presence always a fixed part of reality? In physics, some theories suggest that time might not be strictly linear. The block universe theory proposes that past, present, and future all coexist simultaneously, meaning time travel wouldn't actually change history, it would simply fulfill it. But if that's true, then is the observer ever truly separate from what they observe? And here's the ultimate question. If you go back in time to witness something, but the timeline already includes your presence, then did you ever actually change anything? Or were you simply playing a role in something that was always going to happen? Maybe time travel doesn't just affect history, it proves that history was never separate from the observer in the first place. Level 13. The Reality Fragmentation. Paradox reality is supposed to be stable, a single continuous experience that we all share. But what if reality isn't as solid as we think? What if it's constantly splitting, breaking apart, and reforming without us even noticing? This is the reality fragmentation paradox, the unsettling idea that what we perceive as one coherent world might actually be an infinite number of fractured realities, slightly different from one another. Imagine you make a decision, choosing coffee instead of tea. In one version of reality, you go with coffee. In another, you pick tea. But what if both choices actually happen, just in separate, diverging realities? And what if this doesn't just happen for major events, but for every tiny decision, down to the smallest thought? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that reality isn't singular, but branching, constantly splitting into multiple versions of itself. The many worlds interpretation suggests that every possible outcome of every event exists in its own parallel timeline. But if that's the case, then which version of reality are we in? And more importantly, how would we ever know if reality had already fragmented around us? Maybe the real paradox isn't whether reality fragments. It's that we may never be able to tell how many versions of it exist. Level 14. The Missing Event Paradox. Picture this. You wake up one morning and check your phone, only to see a text about a conversation you don't remember having. Your friend insists you talked yesterday, even providing proof. But you have no memory of it. If it happened, then why does it feel like it didn't? This is the missing event paradox. The eerie possibility that reality sometimes skips moments, events disappear without a trace, and we're left questioning whether they ever happened at all. One possible explanation comes from neuroscience. Sometimes, our brains fail to encode certain moments into memory, leaving gaps we don't even realize exist. But what if this isn't just a failure of memory? What if these events actually disappear? Think about stories of people who claim to have lost time, whether during dreams, accidents, or even unexplained supernatural experiences. Some scientists suggest this could be due to micro-blackouts in consciousness, where the brain momentarily disconnects from reality. But what if time itself occasionally glitches, skipping over entire moments and erasing them from existence? And here's the real question. If an event disappears entirely, leaving no trace, then did it ever really happen in the first place? Level 15. The Self-Referencing Dream Paradox. Have you ever had a dream where you realized you were dreaming, only to wake up and discover you were still inside a dream? What if reality itself works the same way? This is the self-referencing dream paradox, the unsettling idea that dreams, reality, and consciousness might not be as separate as we assume. Think about it. When you're inside a dream, it feels real. You can see, hear, and experience things as if they were truly happening. But the moment you wake up, you realize it was all an illusion. But what if waking up isn't the final step? What if our reality is just another layer of a deeper dream? Philosophers like René Descartes questioned whether we could ever truly prove we weren't dreaming. If our senses can be fooled in dreams, how do we know they aren't being fooled right now? And if we ever did wake up from this reality, how would we even recognize the difference? Maybe the greatest paradox of all is that we might never know whether we're dreaming or if we ever truly wake up. Level 16. The fading memory. Paradox. Imagine this. You recall a memory from years ago, a moment you swear was real, but over time, the details start to blur. Faces become indistinct. Conversations lose their clarity. And soon, you're left wondering, did it even happen the way you remember it? This is the fading memory paradox. The idea that if memories continuously degrade, then how can we ever trust them? More disturbingly, if a memory fades completely, does that mean it never really existed? The human brain isn't a perfect recorder. Unlike a video camera, memories aren't stored as exact replicas of events. Instead, they are reconstructed each time we recall them, and each time we revisit a memory, we unknowingly alter it. Scientists have even found that the act of remembering something can overwrite the original memory, replacing it with a slightly changed version. So here's the paradox. If every memory is slightly different each time we recall it, then over the years, does any memory remain accurate? Or are all our past experiences just distorted reconstructions of events that may no longer resemble the truth? And what about memories we completely forget? If a moment vanishes from your mind, does that mean it never really happened? Or is it still out there, lost in some hidden corner of your consciousness? Perhaps the real paradox isn't that our memories fade, it's that we may never know which of them were real in the first place. Level 17. The looping pathway paradox. Imagine walking through a forest following a twisting path. You keep walking, turning corners, and after what feels like hours, you suddenly realize you're back where you started. The strange thing? You never retraced your steps. This is the looping pathway paradox, the eerie idea that some journeys may seem to move forward, but in reality, they only bring you back to where you began. It's a concept deeply tied to time, space, and perception. In some theoretical models of the universe, time itself might be a loop. This means that no matter how far we travel into the future, we may eventually find ourselves right back at the beginning. But the paradox doesn't stop with time. It applies to thought as well. Have you ever found yourself overthinking something, going in circles, only to arrive at the same uncertainty you started with? What if consciousness itself is trapped in a loop, constantly circling the same ideas, the same fears, the same realities, without ever truly escaping? Maybe the biggest mystery isn't whether the pathway loops, it's whether we ever left in the first place. Level 18. The forgotten name paradox. Have you ever had a word, a name, or a phrase on the tip of your tongue, but no matter how hard you try, you just can't remember it? It feels like it's right there, almost within reach, but it refuses to surface. And then hours later, when you're no longer thinking about it, the answer suddenly pops into your mind. This is the forgotten name paradox, the strange phenomenon where our brain can hold on to information yet refuse to reveal it when we need it most. Neurologists call this the tip of the tongue effect, and it raises a fascinating question. If the brain knows the information but won't let us access it, then where is it hiding? And why does it sometimes take hours or even days for the answer to resurface? Some scientists believe our memories work like a vast network where certain pathways can become temporarily blocked. But what if this goes deeper? What if some knowledge isn't actually forgotten but instead exists in a different part of our mind, one that we can't consciously access? And here's the real paradox. If something is locked away in our mind, but we can't retrieve it, do we truly know it? Or does knowledge only exist when we can access it? Maybe the real mystery isn't why we forget names. It's why they choose to return when we least expect them. Level 19. The changing person paradox. Are you the same person you were 5 years ago? Think about it. Your thoughts have changed, your experiences have reshaped you, and even the cells in your body have been replaced multiple times. So if everything about you has changed, are you still you? This is the changing person paradox, the unsettling realization that our identity is in a constant state of flux. Every moment, every decision, every new memory slightly alters who we are. If the you from a decade ago could meet the you of today, would they recognize each other? Philosophers have debated this paradox for centuries. If identity is tied to memory, then what happens when we forget parts of our past? Are we losing pieces of who we are? And if our thoughts and beliefs evolve, does that mean our old selves are gone forever? Consider the ship of Theseus, a famous paradox where an old ship's wooden planks are replaced one by one over time until none of the original parts remain. Is it still the same ship? Now apply that to yourself. If your body and mind have been gradually replaced, can you truly claim to be the same person you once were? Or is identity just an illusion, a story we tell ourselves to make sense of the ever-changing being we call me? Level 20. The paradox of vanishing time. Have you ever noticed how time seems to speed up as you get older? A single summer felt endless as a child, but now years slip by in a blur. Why does time appear to move faster the more of it we experience? This is the paradox of vanishing time, the eerie sense that the more we live, the less time seems to exist. Neuroscientists suggest that time perception is tied to novelty. When we're young, everything is new. Our brains are constantly absorbing fresh experiences, stretching time. But as we age, routines take over, and fewer new memories are formed, making time feel like it's accelerating. But here's where the paradox deepens. If time speeds up as we get older, does that mean it's constantly disappearing? Is time something real, or is it just a construct of the mind? And if our perception of time is so unreliable, can we ever trust that it moves at all? Perhaps time isn't vanishing. We're just falling further into the illusion of its passing. Level 21. The observer's illusion paradox. Imagine standing still while everything around you moves. You are the fixed point, the observer of reality. But now flip the perspective. What if reality isn't moving at all? What if you are the thing that is changing? This is the observer's illusion paradox, the strange realization that we assume reality is external and independent of us, yet our perception of it is entirely internal. Consider this. Two people can witness the same event, yet recall it completely differently. One might remember it as a joyful experience, while the other perceives it as unsettling. If reality was objective, why does it change depending on who observes it? This paradox is at the heart of quantum physics. The famous double-slit experiment suggests that particles behave differently when observed, implying that observation itself influences reality. So if everything we see is filtered through our own perception, then can we ever truly know what reality is? Maybe the greatest illusion isn't what we see. It's believing that we aren't shaping what we see in the first place. Level 22. The parallel decision. Paradox. Have you ever made a decision and immediately wondered what would have happened if you had chosen differently? What if, in some reality, you did make that other choice? And what if both realities exist simultaneously? This is the parallel decision paradox, the unsettling idea that every choice you make creates a branching path, splitting reality into infinite possibilities. In one version of your life, you took that job offer. In another, you declined it and moved to another city. In one, you spoke to that stranger and made a lifelong friend. In another, you walked away, and they became just another face in the crowd. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that every possible outcome of a decision exists in a separate universe, a theory known as the many worlds interpretation. This means that, while you're living in this reality, there's another version of you living out an alternate timeline, unaware that their world was created by a choice you didn't make. But here's where the paradox deepens. If every decision splits reality, then which version of you is the real one? Are you just one of an infinite number of copies, each existing in their own universe? And if your choices are predetermined by infinite branching realities, do you even have free will at all? Maybe every decision you make is simply the illusion of choice, and in the end, all possibilities happen, just not in the world you can see. Level 23. The fading existence paradox. If a person is forgotten, do they still exist? If every memory of someone is erased, does their existence become meaningless? And if no one remembers you after you're gone, did you ever really exist at all? This is the fading existence paradox, the eerie thought that existence is tied not to reality, but to memory. We assume that once something has happened, it remains a part of the past, set in stone. But what if the past isn't fixed? What if it only exists for as long as someone remembers it? Imagine a world where everyone who knew you forgets you. There are no records, no pictures, no writings that prove you were ever here. If no one can confirm your existence, then do you still exist in any meaningful way? Philosophers have debated this paradox for centuries. Some argue that existence is independent of observation, while others claim that reality itself is shaped by those who perceive it. If history is written by the victors, and memories fade with time, then perhaps reality itself is nothing more than a fragile illusion, one that disappears when no one is left to remember it. So, does existence depend on being remembered, or does it persist even when there's no one left to witness it? Maybe we're all just fading echoes, slowly being erased by time. Level 24. The dual consciousness paradox. You wake up in the morning and go about your day. You think, you feel, you make decisions. But what if there were two of you experiencing this reality at the same time? What if your consciousness could be split, duplicated, or even transferred into another body? Would you still be you? This is the dual consciousness paradox, the mind-bending idea that a single person could hold two independent streams of thought, or that one consciousness could exist in multiple places at once. Consider a thought experiment. A perfect copy of your brain is created and placed into another body. This copy has all your memories, your emotions, and your personality. From its perspective, it is you. But from your perspective, it's just a copy. If both versions of you exist at the same time, which one is the real you? Some theories in neuroscience suggest that consciousness is not a single, unified experience, but rather a collection of processes working together. If that's true, then could consciousness be divided, or even duplicated? And if it could, would you still be the same person? Or maybe the paradox is even deeper. What if all consciousness is an illusion, and the self you experience is just a construct of the brain, a trick played on itself to maintain a sense of identity? Perhaps the biggest question isn't whether consciousness can be split, but whether it even exists as a singular entity at all. Level 25. The reversed causation paradox. Imagine a world where events don't follow the familiar pattern of cause and effect. Instead of one action leading to a consequence, what if the consequence determined the action? What if something in the future caused something in the past? This is the reversed causation paradox, the unsettling idea that effects can precede their causes. In everyday life, we assume that dropping a glass causes it to shatter. But what if the shattering caused the glass to drop? What if you studied for a test because you already passed it? While this sounds impossible, physics suggests that on a quantum level, time may not be as linear as we think. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics propose that particles can be influenced by measurements made in the future, a concept known as retrocausality. If true, this could mean that future events affect past outcomes in ways we don't fully understand. This paradox also challenges the concept of free will. If the future is already influencing the past, do we really have control over our actions, or are we simply following a script that has already been written? And if the past can be altered by future decisions, then how do we know that the present isn't constantly shifting based on choices we haven't made yet? Maybe time isn't a straight line, but a looping thread, where the end is just as powerful as the beginning. Level 26. The unfinished sentence. Paradox. What happens when you start a sentence, but never? This is the unfinished sentence paradox. A linguistic and cognitive trick that highlights how the human brain anticipates meaning even when information is missing. We assume that a sentence will conclude in a logical way, but when it doesn't, our minds struggle to fill in the gap. Think about an incomplete thought. You begin saying something, but before you can finish, you stop. The listener waits, expecting closure. Their brain is already working to predict how the sentence should end. But if the sentence never ends, does it still contain meaning? Or is meaning only created when an idea reaches its conclusion? In a broader sense, this paradox applies to life itself. If a person's story is cut short, does it lose its significance? If a novel has no ending, is it still a story? We assume that everything has a resolution. But what if some things simply stop, unfinished, unresolved, and permanently open-ended? Maybe the greatest mystery isn't how things end, but how much meaning we can find in what's left incomplete. Level 27. The missing room paradox. You check into a hotel with 100 rooms. The receptionist hands you a key to room 47. You take the elevator, walk down the hallway, and count the room numbers. 45, 46, then 48. Room 47 is missing. It's not locked, it's not occupied, it's just gone. This is the missing room paradox, the eerie phenomenon where something expected to exist simply doesn't. No evidence, no explanation, just an empty space where something should be. Hotels, office buildings, and even entire streets have been known to omit numbers due to superstition. But what if a missing number wasn't just a choice, but a genuine mystery? What if somewhere, right now, there's a room that should be there, but isn't? The paradox grows even stranger when you apply it to reality itself. What if parts of existence are simply missing? What if entire people, events, or places have vanished from history? Not erased, not forgotten, but simply never there to begin with? If you woke up tomorrow and found that something had always been missing, how would you even know? Perhaps the real paradox isn't the missing room, but the fact that you're certain it should exist in the first place. Level 28. The self-creating thought. Paradox. Imagine a thought that appears in your mind with no origin. You didn't read it, you didn't hear it, and no one told you about it. Yet somehow it exists. Did you create it, or did it create itself? This is the self-creating thought paradox, a strange loop in consciousness where an idea seems to arise from nothing. If you try to trace its origin, you find yourself stuck in an infinite regression. You think the thought exists because you thought it, but what caused you to think it? Some theories in neuroscience suggest that thoughts don't always emerge from a direct cause. Instead, they arise from a complex web of neural activity, sometimes sparking into existence seemingly at random. But if a thought has no clear cause, can it truly be said to have been created at all? This paradox also applies to time travel. If someone went back in time and gave Shakespeare a copy of his own plays, which he then copied and published, who really wrote them? Did Shakespeare write them, or did they create themselves? Maybe ideas are like whispers in the void, waiting to exist, needing only a mind to catch them. But if a thought creates itself, was it ever truly yours? Level 29. The unknown knowledge. Paradox. What if you already know something, but you don't realize it? The unknown knowledge paradox questions whether knowledge truly exists if you're unaware that you possess it. Imagine being asked a difficult question, one you believe you have no answer to, until suddenly you blurt out the correct response. Did you always know it, or did the knowledge appear in that moment? Psychologists have studied this phenomenon, often referred to as implicit knowledge. Your brain absorbs vast amounts of information that you don't consciously access until a trigger brings it to the surface. This is why people sometimes recall forgotten details under hypnosis, or why instincts guide decisions without rational thought. But this paradox goes deeper. If you already know everything you will ever learn, is learning just the process of uncovering knowledge you already have? If someone asks you a question and you answer correctly by chance, was it really chance, or was the knowledge there all along? Maybe we don't gain knowledge. Maybe we just remember it. Level 30. The self-generating memory paradox. Imagine waking up one day with a memory that feels as real as any other. You remember visiting a city, meeting a stranger, or living a different life, but then you realize you've never been there. The event never happened. This is the self-generating memory paradox, the unsettling possibility that memories can form without experience. If you remember something that never occurred, does that memory hold the same weight as a real one? Psychologists call these false memories, and they can be created through suggestion, misinterpretation, or even the brain's attempt to fill in gaps. But what if a memory isn't just false? What if it created itself? Think about dreams. When you dream, your mind fabricates entire worlds, conversations, and histories. Sometimes those dream memories feel more real than waking life. But if you can experience a memory in a dream that never actually happened, then what separates real memories from imagined ones? If reality is just what we remember it to be, then maybe the past isn't written in stone. It's created in every moment we recall it. Level 31. The hidden observer. Paradox. Imagine you're alone in a room, or at least you think you are. You check every corner, every shadow, every reflection. There's no one there. But what if someone or something is observing you, undetectable and unseen? This is the hidden observer paradox, the idea that there may always be an unknown entity watching you, yet you have no way to prove or disprove its existence. The moment you try to look for the observer, it remains just beyond your perception. This paradox plays on concepts in both philosophy and quantum mechanics. In physics, the observer effect suggests that the mere act of watching something can change its behavior. If observation alters reality, does that mean reality only exists when being observed? And if so, is there always something observing us to ensure reality remains stable? The psychological aspect of this paradox is equally disturbing. Have you ever felt like you were being watched, only to turn around and see no one? Some believe this is an evolutionary trait, a survival mechanism. But what if that feeling isn't just instinct? What if, somewhere beyond perception, something is always watching, but we can never catch it? If you can't prove that you're alone, can you ever truly be sure you are? Level 32. The two worlds paradox. What if, at this very moment, you exist in two different realities, one where you made one choice and another where you chose differently? The two worlds paradox suggests that every decision creates a branching reality, one where you go left and another where you go right. But here's the catch. If both versions of you exist, which one is real, or are they both? This paradox ties into the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which theorizes that every quantum event spawns an alternate universe. But the deeper question is this. If infinite versions of you exist, then what makes this version the one you experience? Why are you here and not one of your countless other selves? If two versions of you are equally real, then what determines which reality you're conscious of? And if all possible worlds exist, does that mean reality isn't a single fixed place, but an endless sea of possibilities where every moment branches infinitely? Maybe the version of you hearing this is just one of many, and maybe another version of you is listening to a different answer right now. Level 33. The simulated existence paradox. What if everything you've ever known, your memories, your thoughts, even your own consciousness, is nothing more than lines of code running in an advanced simulation? The simulated existence paradox questions whether reality is real at all. If we could one day create a perfect simulation indistinguishable from reality, then how can we be sure we're not already in one? Philosopher Nick Bostrom's simulation hypothesis suggests that a civilization advanced enough to run perfect simulations would likely create millions of them. If so, then the chances of our reality being the one true reality are astronomically low. Statistically, it's more likely that we are part of an artificial world, running inside an unimaginably complex system designed by some unknown intelligence. But the paradox goes deeper. If we are in a simulation, then what about our thoughts? Are they programmed responses? Do we have free will, or are our choices just pre-written scripts running within the code? And the scariest question, if this is a simulation, could it be turned off? Would we ever know? Or would the moment of shutdown feel like nothing at all? Level 34. The False Awakening Paradox. You wake up in your bed, stretch, and get out of bed to start your day. Everything feels normal until something strange happens. Maybe the clock hands spin in the wrong direction, or a door leads to a place it shouldn't. Then, in an instant, you wake up again. For real this time. Or at least you think you have. This is the false awakening paradox, the eerie phenomenon, where you wake up, go about your routine, only to realize you were still dreaming the whole time. Sometimes this cycle can happen multiple times, trapping you in a seemingly endless loop of waking up over and over again. But here's where it gets disturbing. If you've ever had a false awakening before, how do you know that right now isn't another one? If it felt real then, what makes this moment any different? If your mind can fabricate a world that feels as vivid as reality, what's stopping it from doing so right now? This paradox challenges the very nature of consciousness. What if waking up is just a shift from one dream to another? What if reality itself is just the most persistent dream, and we'll only wake up when we reach the next level of awareness? Level 35. The Memory Merging Paradox. Imagine recalling a childhood memory, a birthday party, a vacation, or a simple conversation. The details seem crystal clear, but as the years go by, something changes. You hear someone else's version of the story, and suddenly the memory shifts. New details emerge, others fade away. But here's the paradox. Which version is real? The memory merging paradox suggests that every time we recall a memory, we reconstruct it, rather than retrieve it like a file from a computer. With each recollection, we may unknowingly blend elements from other memories, stories we've heard, or even things we thought happened, but never did. Now consider this. If every memory is altered slightly each time we remember it, then how much of what we recall is actually true? If memories are fluid, then what defines our past? If our identity is based on the experiences we remember, but those memories keep changing, then who are we really? At what point does a memory become more of a story than a fact? And if memories merge and evolve over time, can we ever be certain that anything we remember happened the way we think it did? Level 36. The Silent Voice Paradox. Right now, as you read this, you're probably hearing a voice in your head, your inner monologue, the silent narrator that guides your thoughts. But here's the paradox. If this voice is you, then who is the you that is listening? This is the silent voice paradox, a mind-bending contradiction that questions the nature of self-awareness. If your inner voice is part of your consciousness, then why does it sometimes feel like it's speaking to you rather than as you? Some people report arguing with their inner voice, debating decisions, or even experiencing intrusive thoughts that don't seem to belong to them. But if your thoughts are truly your own, then why do they sometimes feel like they come from somewhere else? Even more unsettling is the question of what happens when the inner voice stops. Can you still think without words? And if so, then who, or what, controls your thoughts? If your thoughts aren't entirely yours, then whose are they? Or, is the illusion of control just another trick of consciousness? Level 37. The impossible movement paradox. Imagine you're walking toward a destination, maybe your front door or the edge of a cliff. Logic tells you that to get there, you must first cover half the distance, then half of what remains, then half of that, and so on. Each step takes you closer, but you're always left with some fraction of the distance remaining. If this process continues infinitely, how can you ever actually reach your destination? This is the impossible movement paradox, a variation of Zeno's paradoxes that questions the very nature of motion. If moving from point A to point B requires crossing an infinite number of halfway points, then motion itself should be impossible. And yet, we move effortlessly every day. Some argue that motion is just an illusion, that our brains interpret it as continuous while it actually consists of discrete moments, like frames in a film. Others suggest that infinite divisions don't actually exist in physical reality, only in mathematical abstraction. But here's where it gets even stranger. If movement is an illusion, what does that say about time? Is time flowing continuously, or is it just a series of frozen moments, like frames in a cosmic reel? And if motion is impossible, then how did you even get here? Level 38. The dream paradox of identity. You wake up from a dream, shaken by how real it felt. The people, the places, the emotions, it all seemed vivid. But then you ask yourself, who were you in that dream? Were you yourself, or were you someone else? And if your identity can shift so easily in a dream, what does that say about your real self? This is the dream paradox of identity, a mind-bending dilemma that questions whether our sense of self is as stable as we believe. If your mind can fabricate a completely different identity while dreaming, one that feels just as real as your waking self, then who is the real you? Even more unsettling, some dreams feature no clear identity at all. Sometimes you're just an observer, watching events unfold without a body or a past. If you can exist without an identity in a dream, could the same be true in waking life? Some theories suggest that identity is just an illusion, a narrative we construct to give our experiences continuity. But if your dream self and waking self are both constructs, then what lies beneath? Are you the dreamer or the dream? Level 39. The observer's reality shift paradox. Imagine standing in a room, looking at a chair. You turn your head for a second, and when you look back, the chair has moved slightly. Did it move on its own? Or did reality itself shift while you weren't looking? This is the observer's reality shift paradox, the eerie idea that the world may not be as stable as we assume. Quantum mechanics suggests that particles exist in a superposition of states until they are observed, meaning reality, at its core, may be shaped by our perception. Now take it a step further. If reality only settles into place when we observe it, then what happens when no one is looking? Is the world constantly shifting in ways we can never confirm? Some have reported experiencing small, inexplicable changes, objects appearing in different places, minor details suddenly feeling wrong, memories contradicting reality. Could these be signs of reality shifting beneath our notice? And if observation shapes reality, then who, or what, is the ultimate observer? Level 40. The thought that never was paradox. Have you ever felt like you were just about to have a thought, an idea, a realization, a memory, but it slipped away before you could fully grasp it? It was there, just on the edge of your consciousness, but then nothing. It's as if the thought was never really formed, yet you know it almost existed. This is the thought that never was paradox, a bizarre experience where your brain seems to acknowledge the presence of a thought that was never fully realized.
But if a thought never actually came into existence, how could you even recognize its absence? This paradox suggests that thoughts may exist in a liminal state, somewhere between presence and non-existence. Could it be that our minds generate
Far more ideas than we consciously perceive, and only some make it through? Or is it possible that thoughts emerge and vanish in an instant, existing only in a fleeting moment before they are lost forever? Some theories in neuroscience suggest that thoughts are like electrical signals racing through the brain, and sometimes they fail to reach the conscious mind. Others believe this phenomenon hints at a deeper mystery, that perhaps thoughts are not fully our own, but instead fragments of a greater, unseen reality. If we can almost think something that never was, what does that say about the nature of our own consciousness? Level 41. The unreachable destination. Paradox imagine trying to reach a specific point, a city, a house, or even just the end of a road. No matter how far you travel, no matter how close you get, the destination always seems to move just a little farther away. Every step forward reveals another step yet to be taken. This is the unreachable destination paradox, a scenario in which no matter how much progress is made, the goal remains forever out of reach. It echoes Zeno's paradox, which suggests that if you keep dividing a distance in half, you will never truly arrive. But this paradox feels even more unsettling, because sometimes it happens in real life. Think of dreams where you try to reach a place, but obstacles always appear. Or the pursuit of happiness, where each achievement only leads to another goal. Is reality playing tricks on us, or is the concept of arrival just an illusion? Philosophically, this paradox questions whether we ever truly arrive at anything in life, or if we are always in a state of endless pursuit. If the destination can never be reached, then what are we really chasing? Level 42. The reversed event paradox. Imagine witnessing an event, a glass falling and shattering on the floor. But what if you saw it happen backward? The shards lift into the air, reassemble into a glass, and land perfectly on the table. It makes no sense, right? This is the reversed event paradox, a disturbing contradiction where cause and effect seem to switch places. We assume time moves forward, actions lead to consequences, and past events shape the future. But what if time could reverse? Would effects still need causes, or would events simply happen without a past to justify them? In physics, time is often considered symmetrical at the quantum level. The laws of physics don't technically forbid time from running in reverse. So why don't we ever see it happening? Some theories suggest that time's forward motion is simply an illusion created by our perception. But here's the terrifying thought. If the universe has no fundamental rule against reversed events, could it be happening all the time? What if somewhere out there, events are unfolding in reverse, and we just aren't aware of it? And if time could rewind, what would happen to you? Would you unlive your life moment by moment, forgetting everything until you never existed at all? Level 43. The shape-shifting object. Paradox. Imagine holding an object in your hand, a simple cup. But the moment you glance away, it changes. When you look back, it's no longer a cup, but a book. Then, in an instant, it transforms again into a key, a mirror, or something completely unrecognizable. The object never seems to stay the same, yet it always feels like it was supposed to be whatever it currently is. This is the shape-shifting object paradox, where an object's form is never fixed, yet our perception continuously adjusts to accept whatever it appears to be. If an object can constantly change and still be considered the same thing, then what defines any object's true identity? In quantum mechanics, the idea of wave function collapse suggests that an object's state isn't determined until it's observed. Could this paradox be a manifestation of that principle? Is reality fluid and our objects only stable because our minds expect them to be? Or perhaps the world we perceive is just a fragile construct, one that could dissolve if we ever truly question the stability of the objects around us? What if everything is shape-shifting all the time, and we're just blind to it? Level 44. The non-linear memory. Paradox. We tend to think of memory as a straight line. Events happen, we store them, and we recall them later in sequence. But what if memory doesn't work that way? What if, instead of remembering the past, your mind sometimes remembers the future? This is the nonlinear memory paradox, the unsettling idea that memories aren't necessarily tied to chronological time. Some people report vivid recollections of events before they happen, only to experience them in real life later. Others struggle with déjà vu, feeling like they've lived a moment before, yet they can't explain how. If time is just another dimension, like space, then could memories function more like points on a map rather than a straight path? Could our brains occasionally access the future as easily as they do the past? But if that's true, then what happens when we recall something that never actually occurs? If we can remember things that don't happen, then do those events exist in some other version of reality? And if our memories aren't tied to time, then how can we be sure the past even happened the way we remember it at all? Level 45. The Infinite Versions Paradox. What if every decision you make creates a new version of reality? You chose to go left, but somewhere another version of you went right. You decided to speak up, but in another timeline, you stayed silent. With every passing second, an infinite number of possibilities unfold, creating endless versions of you. This is the infinite versions paradox, the eerie possibility that you are not just one person, but an infinite number of versions of yourself, each following different paths. Some may be almost identical, while others may be completely unrecognizable. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that every choice splits reality into multiple timelines. But if that's true, then which version of you is the real one? If an infinite number of you exist, does that mean none of you are truly unique? And here's the most unsettling question. What if you were a different version of yourself just moments ago? What if you shifted realities without realizing it? If every version of you is equally real, then how can you ever know which one you truly are? Level 46. The Self-Watching Observer. Paradox. Imagine looking at yourself in the mirror. Your reflection moves when you move, mimicking every detail. But what if, instead of a mirror, you were observing yourself from a different perspective, watching your own actions as if you were an outsider? This is the self-watching observer paradox, where the act of observing yourself creates an infinite feedback loop of awareness. In everyday life, we perceive the world from a first-person perspective, but what if you could step outside of yourself and observe everything as if you were an external spectator? Would the you being watched still be the real you, or would you become nothing more than an observer, detached from your own existence? This paradox raises profound questions about consciousness. If you are aware of your own awareness, does that mean there are two versions of you, one being observed and one doing the observing? If so, which is the real one? And if your consciousness can exist in multiple layers of awareness, could you, in theory, become infinitely self-aware, watching yourself forever? The more you think about it, the more unsettling it becomes. Are we truly living, or are we merely watching ourselves live? Level 47. The Reality Reset Paradox. Imagine waking up one day only to realize that everything around you feels slightly different. The people, the places, even the tiniest details seem altered, but you can't quite prove it. Then, as time goes on, things shift again. It's as if reality is resetting over and over, but no one else seems to notice. This is the reality reset paradox, the idea that our world might not be as stable as we think. What if, instead of time moving forward, it occasionally loops back and erases events, only for things to play out slightly differently each time? Could this explain why some people recall events that no one else remembers? Why history sometimes seems inconsistent? Or why we occasionally experience the strange phenomenon of the Mandela effect, where large groups of people remember things differently than recorded history? If reality resets, then do our past actions even matter? And if the world is constantly rewriting itself, then how can we ever be sure of what is real? Level 48. The Dream That Never Ends. Paradox. You go to sleep and wake up the next morning, Everything feels normal, until you notice something strange. No matter what you do, things seem slightly off. Eventually, you begin to question, is this real, or am I still dreaming? This is the dream that never ends paradox, a terrifying possibility, where you are stuck in an infinite dream, never truly waking up. Many people experience false awakenings, where they dream about waking up but later realize they were still asleep. But what if you never reach the real waking world? Some philosophers suggest that there's no definitive way to prove we are not in a dream right now. Our senses rely on our brain's interpretation of reality. But what if that interpretation is just another layer of the illusion? If dreams can feel real and reality can feel like a dream, then how can we ever know when we've actually woken up? And here's the scariest thought. What if we never do? Level 49. The time slip. Paradox. Imagine walking down a familiar street, when suddenly everything changes. The buildings look older, the people are dressed in strange clothing, and the technology is outdated. You blink, and just as quickly, everything returns to normal. Was it just your imagination, or did you really just slip through time? This is the time slip paradox, a bizarre phenomenon where individuals seemingly experience brief, unexplainable jumps into different eras. Some people claim to have walked through a doorway and found themselves in the past, only to return moments later as if nothing happened. Others say they've seen future technology or events that haven't yet occurred. But how is this possible? One theory suggests that time is not strictly linear, but more like a series of overlapping layers. Occasionally, these layers may interact, causing brief glimpses into different points in history. Another possibility is that these time slips are caused by glitches in our perception, momentary lapses in how our brains process reality. If time slips are real, what does that mean for history? Could entire moments be rewritten without us realizing it? And if someone were to experience a time slip and never return, would they be lost forever in another era? Level 50. The shadow's free will. Paradox, your shadow follows you wherever you go. It stretches, shrinks, and bends with your every movement. But here's the strange thought. If your shadow is an extension of you, does it have any control over itself, or is it completely bound to your actions? The shadow's free will paradox asks a deeper question. If something is entirely dependent on another force, can it still have autonomy? In many ways, our own thoughts and decisions are shaped by external influences, our upbringing, society, even the limitations of physics. So, are we truly in control of our choices, or are we just shadows cast by the forces that shape us? Philosophers argue that if every decision we make is a reaction to past experiences, then free will may be nothing more than an illusion. But what if there is a way for the shadow to break free? If a shadow could suddenly move on its own, separate from the person casting it, would it then become its own independent entity? This paradox challenges everything we know about control, determinism, and the very nature of identity. Are we simply reacting to the world like shadows, or do we have the power to step beyond what controls us? Level 51. The voice that speaks. First paradox. When two people begin talking at the same time, one of them usually stops to let the other continue. But imagine a scenario where two identical voices try to speak at the exact same moment. Who speaks first? The voice that speaks first. Paradox explores a situation where two entities, perfectly synchronized, must make a choice. If they are truly identical, then neither should have an advantage, which means both should speak simultaneously. But if they do, and one voice slightly overpowers the other, does that mean the first speaker influenced the outcome? This paradox raises fundamental questions about causality and decision-making. In a universe governed by cause and effect, can an event truly happen without an initial trigger? If two perfectly identical forces act at the same time, what determines the winner? Some physicists believe quantum mechanics may hold the answer. as subatomic particles can exist in states of uncertainty until observed. In this way, the paradox suggests that perhaps reality itself does not choose until the moment an action is finalized. If that's true, then perhaps no voice truly speaks first until the universe forces one to. Level 52. The time loop of thought paradox. Imagine having a thought, but as soon as you try to remember how it started, you realize you've had it before. Over and over, the same idea replays in your mind, and no matter how hard you try, you can't escape it. This is the time loop of thought paradox, a mental trap where a thought seems to exist in an endless cycle with no clear beginning or end. Have you ever felt like you were stuck in a moment of déjà vu where your brain insists you've thought this before, but you can't pinpoint when? Some believe that thoughts might function like time loops, existing in an infinite cycle, constantly repeating themselves without an original source. But if a thought has no clear starting point, did it ever truly begin? Neuroscientists suggest that the brain sometimes misfires, making connections between similar memories, creating the illusion of an infinite loop. Others propose that this paradox could be evidence of a deeper, hidden structure of time itself, one where certain moments or ideas become trapped in an eternal recurrence. Could it be that our own minds are capable of generating paradoxes, ones that don't just exist in theory but actually trap us within them? And if so, how do we break free? Level 53. The paradox of the ever-changing room. You walk into a room you know well. Everything is exactly where you remember it, except for one thing. Maybe it's a picture frame that was once on the left, but is now on the right. Or a lamp that used to be red, but is now blue. The strangest part? No one else notices the change, and even your own memories begin to doubt what's real. This is the paradox of the ever-changing room, a mind-bending scenario where reality seems to shift without warning, but only in ways that are subtle enough to be dismissed. Could it be that your memory is simply unreliable? Or is reality itself in flux, constantly rewriting itself in ways we can't fully perceive? Some scientists suggest this could be linked to the Mandela effect, where groups of people recall different versions of history. Others wonder if this paradox hints at parallel realities overlapping, where minor differences bleed into our own world. If reality is truly unstable, then how do we define what's real? And if a room can change without anyone noticing, what else could be shifting around us without our awareness? Level 54. The recurring number. Paradox. You keep seeing the same number everywhere. It appears on clocks, receipts, street signs, and phone numbers. At first, you brush it off as a coincidence, but as time passes, it starts to feel like something more. What are the odds that the same number would follow you so persistently? This is the recurring number paradox, a strange phenomenon where certain numbers seem to appear again and again in a person's life. Some attribute this to selective attention. Our brains are wired to notice patterns and assign meaning to them. But what if it's something deeper? Throughout history, people have believed in the mystical power of numbers. Numerologists claim that recurring numbers are messages from the universe, while scientists study statistical probabilities to determine whether these occurrences are truly random. But if numbers can repeat in ways that defy logic, could it suggest that reality itself is coded in ways we don't yet understand? If the universe is speaking to you through numbers, what is it trying to say? And more importantly, how do you know when to listen? Level 55. The dreamer who is watched. Paradox. Imagine being in a dream, completely immersed in the strange yet oddly familiar world around you. But then you feel it, an unshakable sensation that you are being watched. You turn around, but no one is there. The feeling intensifies as if unseen eyes are following your every move. In this paradox, you are both the dreamer and the observed, existing in a state of dual awareness. The dream should belong to you, yet it feels as though someone, or something, is inside your mind, watching from a place beyond comprehension. Some claim this paradox reflects the idea that dreams may not be entirely personal. What if consciousness itself is a shared experience? What if, when you dream, you briefly step into another entity's reality, and in doing so, they can see you too? Even more unsettling is the possibility that the dreamer and the observer are the same entity split in two, one part experiencing, the other silently witnessing. But if that's true, then which version of you is the real one? Perhaps the act of dreaming creates a second self, one that exists outside of time, looking in from a dimension where observation and reality merge. But the real question is, if you ever locked eyes with the observer, what would happen next? Level 56. The name you shouldn't know. Paradox: a name appears in your mind. It's unfamiliar, yet it carries a strange significance, as if it belongs to someone or something you were never meant to know. The paradox of the forbidden name suggests that there are pieces of information that exist outside the boundaries of normal reality. Some believe these names belong to beings or entities beyond human comprehension, and simply knowing them is enough to change your perception of reality itself. Think of the ancient belief that knowing a true name grants power over that person. But what if certain names aren't meant to be spoken because they belong to things that should remain unknown? The moment you recall them, you've already crossed a boundary that cannot be undone. Some report waking up from dreams where a single name echoes in their mind, only to vanish the moment they try to recall it. Did they truly hear a name that exists beyond time? Or was it never meant for human consciousness? What if, by simply thinking about it, you've already invited something to notice you? Level 57. The object that was never there. Paradox: have you ever been certain that you placed an object somewhere only to return and find it missing? You search everywhere only to find it in a place you are sure you never left it. But what if that object never actually existed in the first place? This paradox plays with the nature of memory and perception. It suggests that some objects exist only in the moments we acknowledge them, and when we stop thinking about them, they cease to be real. Imagine holding an object, a book, a key, or even something as simple as a pen. You turn away for just a second, and when you look back, it's gone. Did someone take it? Did you misplace it? Or did reality itself simply erase it? Now consider the reverse. You find an object that you have no memory of owning, yet it fits perfectly into your life, as if it has always been there. Friends insist they've seen you with it before, but you can't recall ever acquiring it. This paradox questions the nature of reality itself. If an object's existence depends entirely on our awareness of it, then how many things have disappeared the moment we forgot about them? And what happens to the ones that suddenly appear? Are they gifts from another reality, or are they remnants of a version of history we were never meant to remember? Level 58. The repeating mistake paradox. Have you ever made a mistake, only to find yourself making it again and again, as if you were caught in an invisible loop? No matter how much you try to change your actions, you seem destined to repeat the same error. This is the repeating mistake paradox, a bizarre phenomenon where failures appear to be inevitable, as if time itself is forcing history to replay. Psychologists explain that the brain relies on past experiences to shape future decisions. But if a mistake is deeply ingrained in your subconscious, you may unconsciously repeat it, even when trying to avoid it. This paradox becomes even stranger when people who don't know each other report making the same mistakes in eerily similar ways. But what if this isn't just psychology? What if, on a deeper level, time and fate conspire to make certain actions unavoidable? Some believe this paradox hints at the possibility of predetermined loops, where certain choices are bound to repeat no matter what. If this is true, then do we really have free will? Or are we merely actors in a script that's already been written? And most importantly, if we are doomed to repeat our mistakes, is there any way to break free? Level 59. The vanishing location. Paradox. Imagine visiting a place, perhaps a small cafe or a strange shop tucked away in an unfamiliar part of town. The details of your visit are crystal clear. You remember the smell of the air, the way the lights flickered, and even the conversation you had with someone there. But when you try to return, the place is gone. Not just closed, but as if it never existed. This is the vanishing location paradox, where a place you distinctly remember seems to have been erased from reality itself. Some who experience this phenomenon question their own memory, but others are convinced they momentarily stepped into a reality that no longer exists. Could these locations be shifting between dimensions? Some theories suggest that places, like people, can exist in multiple realities, phasing in and out without warning. Others believe that this paradox hints at glitches in the fabric of time, where forgotten spaces momentarily reappear before vanishing again. If a place can cease to exist without explanation, then how do we know that our world is stable? And, if locations can vanish without a trace, could entire realities be disappearing around us without anyone noticing? Level 60. The dream that creates memories. Paradox: you wake up with a vivid memory, so real that it feels like it actually happened. Maybe it was a conversation with someone you haven't seen in years, or an event you're certain was real. But when you check, there's no evidence that it ever occurred. In fact, no one else remembers it at all. This is the dream that creates memories. Paradox: where dreams don't just stay as fleeting images in your mind, but instead become indistinguishable from reality. Scientists have found that the brain processes dreams and real memories in similar ways, sometimes storing dreams as if they were actual experiences. But what if it's more than just a trick of the mind? Some speculate that these dreams are glimpses into alternate versions of our lives, realities where events did happen, but not in this world. Others believe that time itself can be influenced by thought, and a dream might be creating a new memory that could one day become real. If dreams can shape our past, then how do we truly know what's real? And if we can remember things that never happened, could those memories eventually create a reality of their own? Level 61. The conversation that never happened paradox. Imagine vividly recalling a deep conversation with a close friend, where you discussed secrets, plans, or even life-changing advice. Every detail feels real: their voice, the emotions, the setting. But when you bring it up later, they look at you with confusion. They insist the conversation never took place. This is the conversation that never happened paradox. A strange occurrence where memories of interactions seem to be implanted in your mind without ever taking place in reality. It raises a chilling question. If your memory insists something happened, but the world says otherwise, which version is true? Psychologists suggest that the brain can fabricate memories by mixing dreams, thoughts, or similar past events, creating the illusion of a conversation that never occurred. But what if these memories aren't fabrications at all? Some believe they could be echoes from parallel universes where the conversation did happen, but in another reality. Others theorize that these could be premonitions, fragments of future events slipping into the present. If our minds can create or access conversations from alternate timelines, then how much of what we remember is real? And if memories can appear without ever happening, could we also forget events that actually did? Level 62. The impossible choice paradox. Have you ever faced a decision so impossible that no matter what you choose, something doesn't make sense? Imagine standing at a crossroads with two paths. One leads forward, the other backward. But when you take one path, you find yourself back at the start, as if no decision was ever made. This is the impossible choice paradox, where certain decisions seem to defy logic, making it impossible to progress no matter what option is taken. In some cases, people recall making a choice, only to later realize that no matter what they did, the outcome remained the same. Some believe this paradox hints at the illusion of free will, where our choices are merely pre-programmed events leading to the same inevitable conclusion. Others suggest that reality itself shifts to neutralize decisions, erasing certain outcomes, to maintain balance. But if true choice doesn't exist, then what does that mean for our sense of control? And if some decisions are impossible to make, could that mean certain fates are unavoidable? Level 63. The self-contradictory dream. Paradox. Imagine waking up from a dream that contradicts itself at every turn. In the dream, you see yourself entering a house, but also watching from outside. You hear a voice tell you a secret, yet at the same time, it's your own voice speaking. The entire experience makes sense while you're dreaming, but the moment you wake up, nothing adds up. This is the self-contradictory dream paradox, where dreams contain impossible realities that somehow feel logical until examined. Psychologists explain that dreams can merge conflicting thoughts, allowing the mind to process contradictions in a way waking reality never could. But what if these paradoxes reveal something deeper about the nature of consciousness? Some believe that these dreams are glimpses into fragmented versions of ourselves, alternate selves that exist simultaneously in different states of awareness. Others think these paradoxes are proof that reality itself is more fluid than we assume, and that contradictions exist even outside our dreams. If a dream can make perfect sense while defying logic, then how do we know reality isn't the same? And if contradictions can exist within our minds, could they also exist in the real world without us noticing? Level 64. The room that expands. Paradox. Imagine stepping into a small, familiar room. You take a few steps forward, then turn around. But something is off. The room feels bigger than before. The walls seem farther apart, the ceiling higher, and the corners more distant. You retrace your steps, yet the space continues stretching, as if defying the laws of reality. This is the room that expands paradox, an unsettling phenomenon where a confined space appears to grow without any logical explanation. Some report this happening in dreams, where rooms become infinitely large despite once being small. Others claim to have felt this sensation in real life, particularly in moments of deep concentration or altered states of mind. Scientists attribute this to spatial perception errors, where the brain misinterprets distance and scale based on focus and environment. However, some theorists suggest a far stranger explanation, that reality itself isn't as fixed as we believe. Could it be that certain spaces have the ability to shift in response to our consciousness? And if a room can expand in such a way, does that mean space itself is more fluid than we assume? If the places we think we know can change without warning, then how stable is the reality we rely on? Level 65. A word that can't be remembered. Paradox. Have you ever had a word on the tip of your tongue, something so familiar yet frustratingly unreachable? You know what it means, how it sounds, and even the context where it fits, yet no matter how hard you try, the word simply won't come to mind. Then, hours later, when you're not even thinking about it, the word suddenly appears. This is the word that can't be remembered paradox. A strange gap in memory, where something you know seems temporarily erased from your mind. It's more than just forgetfulness. It's as if the word actively hides from you, only to resurface at a random moment. Neurologists explain this as a retrieval failure, where the brain struggles to access stored information due to interference. But what if it's something else? Some believe this paradox hints at gaps in our perception of time, where certain thoughts become out of sync with our consciousness. Others theorize that forgotten words exist in a mental blind spot, an area of the mind that becomes momentarily inaccessible. If certain thoughts can evade us at will, what else might be slipping through the cracks of our memory? Level 66. The story that ends before it begins. Paradox. Imagine picking up a book and flipping to the last page, only to find that the ending describes something that never actually happened. You turn back to the beginning, expecting an explanation, but the first page is missing. Somehow the story concludes before it even starts, leaving a sense of something unfinished, yet already over. This is the story that ends before it begins. Paradox, a contradiction where an event is resolved before it has a chance to unfold. It appears in literature, where narratives start in the middle or conclude without explanation. But what if this paradox isn't just a storytelling technique? What if it reflects something about time itself? Some believe that certain events in life follow this pattern, moments that feel like déjà vu, where an outcome is known before the experience actually occurs. Others suggest this paradox hints at time loops, where causes and effects don't always follow a linear sequence. If a story can end before it begins, then could time itself be moving in ways we don't understand? And if we ever experience something that feels like it has already happened, does that mean we are trapped in a paradox of our own? Level 67, the self-interacting paradox. Imagine walking into a room and seeing yourself sitting in a chair. Not a reflection, not a video, but an actual version of you, staring back, blinking at the same time, mirroring your every move. You try to speak, but so do they. It's as if you exist twice in the same reality. This is the self-interacting paradox, where you encounter another version of yourself, creating a scenario that defies logic. Some describe this phenomenon in dreams, where they meet a second version of themselves that appears to have its own thoughts, separate from their control. Others experience it in déjà vu-like moments, where they feel as though they are observing themselves from an external perspective. Scientists explain this as a trick of the brain, our consciousness misfiring and creating illusions of duality. However, certain theories suggest something far stranger. What if our consciousness exists in multiple dimensions at once? Could it be possible that under rare conditions, two versions of you momentarily overlap? If so, then who is the real version? And if you were to interact with yourself, which one of you would be in control? Level 68. The paradox of the frozen time. Dream. You wake up in the middle of a dream, except nothing moves. The world around you is frozen in place. People stand still, birds hover mid-flight, and even the wind remains locked in the air. You try to move, but something feels wrong. Time isn't passing, yet you are aware of everything. This is the paradox of the frozen time dream, a bizarre experience where time appears to stop completely, yet consciousness remains active. Some who have lucid dreams report this phenomenon, claiming they have experienced entire moments where reality is frozen, like a paused movie. Others encounter this in near-death experiences, describing a feeling of time stretching infinitely in an instant. One theory suggests that during these moments, the brain accelerates thought processing to such a degree that external time feels non-existent. But what if time itself can truly pause in certain states of consciousness? Could it be that the fabric of reality isn't as continuous as we think, and we sometimes witness the gaps in between? If time can freeze within a dream, does that mean it can freeze in reality too? And if you were trapped in such a state forever, would you even know?
Level 69. The missing identity. Paradox. Imagine waking up one day and realizing something is off, not with the world, but with yourself. You look in the mirror and recognize your reflection, but deep down, you feel like a different person. Your
memories are intact. Your name is the same. Yet something inside tells you that you are not who you used to be. This is the missing identity paradox, a haunting phenomenon where individuals feel as though their true self has been replaced or erased. Some experience this as dissociation, a sense of detachment from their own existence. Others report a sudden realization that their personality, thoughts, or even their perception of the past have changed overnight. Psychologists often attribute this to identity disturbances caused by stress, trauma, or neurological factors. However, a more unsettling theory exists. What if identity itself isn't a fixed thing? Could it be that the person you were yesterday is not the same as who you are today? And if so, then where did the previous you go? If identity can change without explanation, does that mean we are constantly becoming different versions of ourselves? And if our sense of self can vanish, was it ever real to begin with? Level 70. The location that moves paradox. Imagine walking through your neighborhood, taking the same route you always do. But something feels wrong. You turn a familiar corner, expecting to see your favorite cafe, but instead, there's an empty parking lot. Confused, you walk back, only to find the cafe in a completely different place. This is the location that moves paradox, where places seem to shift positions, defying logic and memory. Many people report experiencing this in dreams where they visit a well-known location only to find it altered, rearranged, or existing in two places at once. But what's more unsettling is when this phenomenon occurs in real life, when you swear a building, a landmark, or even an entire street was somewhere else before. Could this be a simple case of misremembering, or is something more mysterious at play? Some theorists suggest that we might be unknowingly slipping between parallel versions of reality, where slight changes occur without our full awareness. Others propose that our minds may be rewriting reality, altering our perception to align with an unknown set of rules. If locations can move, then what does that say about the stability of our reality? And if we ever found proof that a place truly changed position, what would that mean about the nature of space itself? Level 71. The vanishing face. Paradox: you're talking to someone, maybe a friend, a family member, or even a stranger. Everything seems normal until, in a split second, their face disappears. Their body remains. Their voice continues speaking, but their face is just gone. No features, no expression, just an empty, smooth surface where their identity used to be. This is the vanishing face paradox, a deeply unsettling experience reported in certain dreams, hallucinations, and even moments of altered perception in real life. Some claim they have seen people's faces blur or vanish before their eyes, only to return moments later. Others describe looking at themselves in the mirror and, for a brief second, not recognizing their own reflection. One scientific explanation involves how the brain processes facial recognition. If interrupted, it can momentarily fail to fill in the details of a face, creating this eerie effect. But some believe this phenomenon could be evidence of something far stranger: a glitch in reality, where faces are not as permanent as we assume. If a face can disappear even for a moment, then what does that mean about identity itself? And more importantly, if it happens again, how do you know it won't vanish forever? Level 72. The memory swap paradox. Imagine waking up one day with memories that don't belong to you. You remember an event, clear as day, but when you ask a friend about it, they insist it never happened. Worse yet, they recall something completely different, something you swear never took place. It's as if your memories have been exchanged. This is the memory swap paradox, where two people recall different versions of the same past. It's an experience often tied to the Mandela effect, where large groups of people misremember details of history. Some researchers believe this phenomenon results from the brain's natural errors in reconstructing memories. But what if it's more than that? One theory suggests that reality itself might be unstable, constantly shifting in ways we don't notice except in our memories. If the past can change without warning, then which version is real? And if memories can be swapped between individuals, are they even ours to begin with? Level 73. The shape that can't exist. Paradox: imagine looking at a drawing of a shape you've never seen before. At first, it seems normal, until you try to trace its edges. No matter where you start, something feels off. The angles don't add up. The lines seem to bend in impossible ways, and the more you focus, the less sense it makes. This is the shape that can't exist paradox, where an object defies the rules of space and geometry. Examples of this can be found in optical illusions, like the famous Penrose triangle or the Devil's Fork, which seem three-dimensional but are actually impossible structures. But what if such shapes could exist beyond illusions? Some mathematicians and physicists propose that higher dimensions might contain forms that we simply can't perceive correctly. If a fourth or fifth dimensional object were projected into our three-dimensional world, it might appear to warp, twist, or break the laws of physics as we know them. If these shapes truly exist, what else might be hidden beyond our perception? And if we ever encountered one in real life, how would our minds even process it? Level 74. The infinite staircase paradox. Imagine stepping onto a staircase that goes up in a continuous loop. You climb higher and higher, yet somehow you always end up where you started. No matter how long you walk, the stairs never end, and the top is always just out of reach. This is the infinite staircase paradox, a mind-bending concept often represented by Escher's famous artwork of an endless loop of stairs. In theory, such a staircase is impossible in three-dimensional space, yet our minds can visualize it clearly. The paradox relates to time, perception, and even the nature of the universe itself. Could our reality be structured like an infinite loop, where we keep repeating cycles without realizing it? Some theories about time suggest that we might be stuck in repeating patterns, reliving variations of the same moments over and over. If that's the case, then how would we ever know? And if we're trapped in an endless loop, is there any way to break free? Level 75. The thought that repeats paradox. Have you ever had a thought that seems to echo endlessly in your mind? No matter how hard you try to move on, it keeps coming back, looping over and over. You might not even know why you're thinking it, but it refuses to go away. This is the thought that repeats paradox, a strange mental experience where a single idea, phrase, or memory gets stuck in an infinite loop. It's similar to an earworm, where a song plays in your head repeatedly, except instead of music, it's a persistent thought that won't let go. Some believe this phenomenon occurs because of how our brains process unfinished or unresolved thoughts, but others suggest it could be a sign of something deeper, an indication that our consciousness might be structured in a way we don't fully understand. What if certain thoughts are meant to repeat forever? And if a thought has no beginning or end, does it even belong to you, or is it part of something larger, something infinite? Level 76. The name that was never yours. Paradox. Imagine someone calls your name, and you instinctively turn around. But what if you suddenly realize that name was never yours? What if you have memories of being called something else, yet everyone around you insists that you've always had this name? This is the name that was never yours. Paradox. A strange phenomenon where your identity shifts without explanation. It's as if reality itself has been altered, erasing any trace of your original name and replacing it with something unfamiliar. But if your name is different, then who are you? This paradox plays into ideas of personal identity and memory manipulation. Some theorists suggest that our sense of self is deeply tied to our names. If a person's name changes without their knowledge, could their identity change as well? This concept is also explored in stories of people experiencing the Mandela effect, where entire groups of people remember details differently from the recorded history. What if the name you always had was just an illusion, and reality has rewritten itself without your awareness? If names are just labels given to us, then does changing a name mean changing the person? Or are we something beyond the words that define us? Level 77. The observer that becomes the observed paradox. Have you ever felt like you were being watched, even when you were alone? You turn around, but there's no one there. Yet, the feeling lingers, as if some unseen presence is observing your every move. This is the observer that becomes the observed paradox, a chilling thought experiment about the nature of perception. Normally, we assume that we are the ones observing the world. But what if, at the same time, something else is observing us? This paradox ties into ideas from quantum mechanics, where the mere act of observation can change the outcome of an event. If reality shifts based on who is watching, then what happens when the observer becomes the one being watched? Could it be that our reality is like a one-way mirror, where we believe we are looking outward, but in truth, something else is looking back at us? If so, who or what is the true observer? And are we ever truly alone? Level 78. The illusion. of separation paradox. You look at the world and see yourself as separate from everything else. You are you, and everything else is not you. But what if this distinction is nothing more than an illusion? This is the illusion of separation paradox, the idea that the boundaries we perceive between ourselves and the world might not actually exist. Science tells us that everything is made of atoms, constantly moving and exchanging energy. If nothing is truly solid, then where does one thing end and another begin? Many philosophical and spiritual traditions suggest that separation is a trick of the mind. In reality, all things might be connected as part of a single, unified existence. If that's true, then are you really an individual, or are you just a temporary expression of something much larger? If the illusion of separation were to break, would you still be you? Or would you realize that you were never separate to begin with? Level 79. The color that doesn't exist. Paradox. Close your eyes and try to imagine a new color, one that no human has ever seen before. You might mix shades in your mind, but no matter how hard you try, every color you envision already exists. But what if there was a color that lies beyond human perception, one that exists in reality but is impossible for our eyes to see? This is the color that doesn't exist paradox, a thought-provoking mystery that challenges the limits of our senses. Scientists know that the human eye can only detect a small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, what we call visible light. However, beyond red, there is infrared. Beyond violet, there is ultraviolet. These are real, but we cannot see them. Now imagine there are other colors, beyond anything we know, existing outside our perception. If you could see this impossible color, would it break your understanding of reality? What if your brain, unable to process it, simply ignored it, leaving you blind to something that has been around you all along? If our perception is limited, then how much of reality do we truly see? And what else might exist just beyond our understanding? Level 80. The soundless noise. Paradox. Imagine a sound so strange that it doesn't make any noise. It's not silence, but it's also not something you can hear. It exists, yet it remains undetectable. How can something be both a sound and not a sound at the same time? This is the soundless noise paradox, a contradiction that questions the very nature of hearing. In reality, sound is simply vibrations moving through the air. But what if there were vibrations that our ears were incapable of detecting? Sounds so high-pitched or so deep that they exist in complete silence to us? Some people claim to hear strange frequencies or experience an eerie sense of presence in complete silence. Could it be that there are sounds beyond our perception, ones we feel rather than hear? And if something is producing a sound, but no living being can hear it, does it truly exist? Or is it only real if there is someone there to listen? Level 81. The light that casts no shadow. Paradox picture. A bright light source in a dark room. When it shines on an object, that object casts a shadow. But now, imagine a light that shines without creating shadows at all. No matter where you place an object, the shadow never forms. This is the light that casts no shadow. Paradox, a mind-bending mystery that challenges our understanding of how light works. Shadows exist because light travels in straight lines and is blocked by solid objects. But if a light could shine from all directions at once, or if it existed in a way we can't comprehend, then perhaps shadows wouldn't form at all. Some theorists speculate that in a higher dimensional reality, light might behave differently, bending around objects in ways that seem impossible to us. Others suggest that in a simulated universe, light could exist without following normal physical rules. If you encountered a light that didn't create shadows, what would that mean for the laws of physics? Would it be proof that our reality is not what it seems? And if light itself can defy our expectations, then what other impossible things might also be real? Level 82. The door that opens to nothing paradox. Imagine walking down a long, empty hallway. At the end, you find a mysterious door. It has no markings, no handle, just a simple frame. But as you push it open, there is nothing. Not darkness, not emptiness, just nothingness itself. It is not a void. It is the absence of existence. This is the door that opens to nothing. Paradox, a disturbing contradiction that questions the very nature of reality. In our world, a door always leads somewhere, even if it's just an empty room. But what happens when a door opens to a space that does not exist? If nothing is there, then where are you when you step through? Are you outside reality, or are you simply ceasing to be? Some have theorized that such a door could be a gateway to a place that human consciousness cannot comprehend, an existence so alien that it defies all logic. But here's the real paradox. If the door opens to nothing, then how can it be observed? If you can look at it, is it truly nothing at all? And if you step inside, do you become part of that nothingness? Or do you prove that the space was something all along? Level 83. The stranger that knows you. Paradox. You're sitting alone in a cafe when a stranger approaches. They greet you by name, mention details of your life, and speak as if they have known you for years. But no matter how hard you try, you have never seen this person before. They insist you've met many times, sharing moments, conversations, even secrets. This is the stranger that knows you paradox, a chilling concept that blurs the lines between memory, identity, and reality. How can a person know you when you don't know them? Is it possible your mind has erased them? Or have they slipped into your reality from somewhere else? Perhaps another timeline where you were once close. Some believe that déjà vu is a glitch in our perception of time, where fragments of forgotten experiences resurface in strange ways. Others suggest that reality is not as fixed as we believe, and that sometimes people from parallel lives can briefly overlap. But if someone remembers you while you have no memory of them, which version of reality is correct? Are they mistaken? Or are you simply unaware of an entire life you once lived? Level 84. The object that changes when unseen paradox. You place a book on your desk and leave the room. When you return, it is still there. But something is off. The title is different. The pages seem older. The book is the same, and yet, it is not. This is the object that changes when unseen paradox, a disturbing idea that suggests objects might not remain the same when they are not being observed. In quantum physics, there is a phenomenon called the observer effect, where particles behave differently depending on whether they are being watched. What if everyday objects follow a similar rule? What if the moment you look away, everything shifts, subtly, imperceptibly, yet undeniably? Could this mean reality is shaped not by fixed rules, but by perception itself? And if the world only solidifies when observed, then what is truly real? If you leave an object and return to find it unchanged, how can you be sure it didn't change while you were gone? And if it did, what unseen forces are at work, rewriting reality when no one is watching? Level 85. The mirror that shows a different. You paradox, you stand before a mirror, expecting to see yourself reflected back. But something is off. The person in the glass looks like you, moves like you, but their expression lingers a moment too long. Their eyes seem unfamiliar, almost as if they are not just a reflection, but someone else entirely. This is the mirror that shows a different. You paradox, a chilling concept that questions the nature of identity and perception. A mirror is supposed to reflect reality, but what if it doesn't? What if instead it reveals an alternate version of you, one from another timeline, another universe, or even another consciousness? Some theories suggest that mirrors are more than just reflective surfaces. They may be windows to parallel realities. If so, could it be that every time you look into a mirror, you are not just seeing yourself, but an alternate version of you, one living a life just slightly different from yours? But here's where the paradox deepens. If the reflection is truly different, how would you ever prove it? It would always change when you do, mirroring your movements to maintain the illusion of sameness. If you ever catch it behaving differently, even for a split second, then who is truly real, you or the reflection? What if the real you is the one in the mirror and the one outside is just the reflection? Level 86. The thought that never ends. Paradox: you think of something, a memory, a question, an idea. But no matter how much time passes, the thought never fades. It lingers, looping endlessly in your mind, repeating itself in fragments. No matter how hard you try, you cannot let it go. This is the thought that never ends. Paradox: a mental loop that seems to defy logic. Normally, thoughts come and go, but what if a thought could become trapped in your consciousness, persisting forever? Some believe this phenomenon is similar to an infinite loop in a computer program, an error in processing that causes a system to run the same command indefinitely. If the human brain is like a biological computer, could a certain thought become an inescapable loop trapping you inside your own mind? The more you try to forget it, the stronger it becomes. The more you analyze it, the deeper you sink. But here's the real paradox. If the thought has no end, did it ever truly begin? Or has it always been there, waiting for you to notice? Level 87. The path that splits and rejoins. Paradox: you walk along a quiet road when you reach a fork. Two paths stretch before you, each leading in a different direction. You choose one and continue forward, certain that the other path leads somewhere else. But after a while, you find yourself back at the fork, as if the road itself has bent reality to bring you back. This is the path that splits and rejoins paradox, a mind-bending contradiction that challenges our understanding of choices and consequences. In a logical world, a decision to take one path should mean you cannot take the other. But what if every choice eventually leads back to the same destination? Some theories suggest that time is not linear, but cyclical, that events repeat in endless loops, subtly altering each time. If so, could a path that splits still lead to the same place? Could every possible choice, no matter how different, ultimately bring you to the same inevitable outcome? But here's the paradox. If the paths truly split, then they should remain separate. If they rejoin, then did they ever truly diverge? And if every road leads back to the same point, then is there ever really a choice at all? Level 88. The dream that was never yours. Paradox: you wake up, your heart pounding. A dream lingers in your mind. So vivid, so detailed, so real. But something about it feels wrong. It wasn't just a dream. It wasn't yours. This is the dream that was never yours. Paradox: a reality-bending mystery that makes us question the origins of our thoughts and subconscious experiences. Normally, dreams are personal, shaped by memories, fears, and emotions. But what if you experienced a dream that didn't belong to you? Some people have reported dreaming of places they've never been, people they've never met, or lives they've never lived. Some believe these are glimpses into parallel realities, memories from past lives, or even transmissions from other minds. Could it be that dreams are not just random, but a shared experience, something that can be passed from one consciousness to another? But here's the real paradox. If the dream wasn't yours, then whose was it? And if you remember it, does that not make it yours now? If a thought, a vision, or a nightmare enters your mind, does it matter where it came from? Or is it now a part of you forever? Level 89. The knowledge that shouldn't exist. Paradox: you suddenly know something you've never learned, something no one ever told you. It just appeared in your mind as if it had always been there. You check, research, and confirm. It's real. But how? This is the knowledge that shouldn't exist. Paradox: a strange phenomenon where people become aware of information they were never exposed to. It could be a language they never studied, a historical event they were never taught, or a scientific concept they had no way of understanding. Some explain this through forgotten memories or subconscious learning, but others propose something more unsettling. What if information itself has no true origin? What if knowledge is not learned but discovered, always existing in the universe, waiting to be remembered? And here's the paradox. If you know something but don't know how, you learned it? Did you ever truly learn it? Or was it always inside you, waiting to emerge? And if knowledge can simply appear, what else do you already know without realizing it? Level 90. The object that watches back. Paradox, you feel it. A presence. You glance at an ordinary object. A painting, a doll, a statue, even a simple chair. It has no eyes, no face, no way of perceiving you, but somehow you know it is watching. This is the object that watches back paradox, a deeply unsettling idea that makes us question the nature of perception. We assume that only living things can observe, but what if inanimate objects possess a form of awareness, one we cannot comprehend? Some ancient cultures believed certain artifacts or structures held a form of consciousness. Others suggest that observation itself creates reality. If you stare at an object, does it somehow acknowledge your presence in return? But here's the paradox. If something without eyes can watch you, what does that mean about perception itself? Is it limited to vision, or is the act of being observed something beyond human understanding? And most disturbingly, if the object is watching you, what does it see? Level 91. The memory that comes from nowhere. Paradox, you're going about your day when suddenly an unfamiliar memory flashes in your mind. It's vivid, detailed, and feels undeniably real. You remember the scent in the air, the emotions tied to the moment, and even the texture of the world around you. But there's just one problem. This memory doesn't belong to you. This is the memory that comes from nowhere. Paradox, a phenomenon that makes us question the very foundation of our past. Memories are supposed to be shaped by our experiences, yet sometimes people recall moments they never lived. Some describe remembering childhood events that never happened, places they've never visited, or even entire lives that seem to exist somewhere, just not in this reality. Could it be a glitch in the brain, a fragment of a dream mistaken for reality? Or could it be something much stranger, evidence of parallel lives, ancestral memories, or even echoes of past selves? And here's the real paradox. If you remember something so vividly that it feels real, does it matter whether it actually happened? If memories define who we are, what happens when they come from somewhere or someone else? Level 92. The stranger that feels familiar. Paradox, you're walking through a crowd when suddenly you see them, a stranger. You've never met them before, yet something about them feels eerily familiar. Their face, their presence, the way they carry themselves, it's like you know them. But how? This is the stranger that feels familiar. Paradox, an unsettling mystery where we encounter people we've never seen before yet somehow recognize. Some believe this is the brain mistakenly linking a stranger to a forgotten face. Others suggest déjà vu, an error in memory processing. But what if it's something much deeper? Could it be a lost memory from another life? A connection from a forgotten dream? Or even proof that time itself is not as linear as we believe? And here's the paradox. If a person you don't know feels familiar, does that mean you do know them on some level? Is it possible that we've met people before, just not in this lifetime? Level 93. The word that was never invented. Paradox, you're in a conversation when suddenly a word slips from your mouth. It sounds real, it feels natural, yet the person you're speaking to looks at you strangely. That word doesn't exist. It was never invented. This is the word that was never invented, paradox, an eerie linguistic phenomenon where people claim to remember words, phrases, or entire languages that were never recorded in human history. Some experience this as a fleeting moment of confusion, while others recall using certain words their entire lives. until they realize no one else recognizes them. Could this be a case of false memory, a subconscious creation of the brain? Or could it be something more bizarre, an echo from an alternate reality where the word does exist? And here's the paradox. If language is simply a construct, does a word need to be officially recognized to be real? If you understand its meaning, and so does someone else, hasn't it already been invented? Level 94. The hand that moves on its own. Paradox. Imagine sitting still, your hands resting at your sides. Then, without warning, your fingers twitch. Your hand lifts. It moves, not by your command, but as if it has a mind of its own. You didn't decide to move it. So who did? This is the hand that moves on its own paradox, a mystery that challenges our very understanding of control. We assume we command our body, that every movement is the result of a conscious decision. Yet countless people have reported moments where their limbs act without their intent. Some experience it as a fleeting twitch, while others describe full, deliberate movements they cannot explain. Science offers theories, muscle memory, involuntary neural misfires, or even conditions like alien hand syndrome, where parts of the body seem to act independently. But what if it's something stranger? Could your hand be responding to an unseen force? A subconscious impulse from another version of you? Or even a reality where you are not the sole controller of your body? And here's the paradox. If your hand moves without your command, are you really in control of your actions? Or are we just passengers in our own bodies, only thinking we hold the reins? Level 95. The reality that edits itself. Paradox. You wake up in the morning, stepping into your kitchen to grab a cup of coffee. But wait, wasn't the fridge on the left side yesterday? You shake it off. Maybe you just misremembered. But then, you notice a street sign that looks slightly different, a childhood memory that no one else recalls, a detail about your past that seems to shift each time you think about it. Welcome to the reality that edits itself. Paradox, a mind-bending anomaly where reality doesn't stay consistent. Some believe it's just memory errors, but others report experiencing real changes. Objects appearing where they never were. Details of history subtly shifting, and moments that seem to rewrite themselves. Could this be the brain filling in gaps with false memories? A side effect of how we process the past? Or could it be something much more disturbing, evidence that reality itself is in flux, constantly rewriting itself like a living document? And here's the real paradox. If reality changes but we remember the past version, which one was real? Can we even trust the world around us if it refuses to stay the same? Level 96. The light that comes from nowhere. Paradox, you're walking through a dark room when suddenly you see it. A faint glow. It isn't coming from a lamp, a phone, or any known source. It's just there, hovering, existing. Then, just as mysteriously, it vanishes. This is the light that comes from nowhere. Paradox, an unexplained phenomenon where people witness light without an identifiable origin. Some describe small orbs, while others report full, glowing shapes. Yet, when they try to investigate, there's nothing there, no reflection, no object casting the glow, just an impossible presence that defies the rules of physics. Some believe it's an optical illusion, a trick of the eyes adjusting to darkness. Others suggest energy anomalies or even glimpses of another dimension seeping into ours. But here's the real question. If light needs a source, yet you see one without it, where is it really coming from? And here's the paradox. If a light shines without a source, does it even exist? Or are we seeing something that isn't meant to be seen? Level 97. The dream that remembers you. Paradox, you wake up from a dream, shaking off the strange details, a city you've never seen, a stranger's voice, a place that felt eerily familiar. You forget about it, just like every other dream. But the next night, you return. the same city, the same stranger, and this time they remember you. This is the dream that remembers you paradox, an unsettling phenomenon where dreams don't just repeat, they evolve. People report meeting dream characters who recognize them, picking up conversations where they left off, and returning to locations that seem too detailed to be random. Some even claim their dreams react to their waking life, as if an unseen intelligence is watching them sleep. Could it be our subconscious, crafting a continuous narrative? Or is something else waiting for us in the dream world? If we remember our dreams, could it be possible that they remember us too? And here's the real paradox. If your dreams are supposed to be a creation of your mind, then who is remembering you? Level 98. The question that can't be answered paradox: what is the sound of one hand clapping? If a tree falls in a forest, with no one around, does it make a sound? More importantly, why do these questions make your brain feel like it's short-circuiting? This is the question that can't be answered. Paradox, a concept that challenges the very foundation of logic and perception. Some questions seem simple, but when we try to answer them, we realize they defy conventional thinking. They create loops, contradictions, or require knowledge beyond human understanding. Think about it. Can a perfect circle truly exist in the real world? What came before time began? If nothingness exists, isn't that something? These aren't just riddles. They expose the limits of human comprehension, the boundaries of reality itself. And here's the paradox. If a question cannot be answered, does that mean it was the wrong question to ask? Or does it mean reality itself has missing pieces we were never meant to find? Level 99. The time that has no beginning. Paradox: we assume time is a straight line, past, present, future. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if time never had a starting point? What if it's always existed? This is the time that has no beginning paradox, a mind-bending idea that questions the very nature of existence. If everything has a cause, then what caused time itself? If the universe began with the Big Bang, then what came before it? And before that? And before that? Some theories suggest an infinite cycle, where time loops endlessly. Others propose that time itself is an illusion, something our brains create to make sense of change. But here's the real problem. If time never had a beginning, then how did anything ever happen in the first place? And here's the paradox. If time never started, then are we even moving through it? Or are we just experiencing an endless now? Level 100. The reality that watches you back. Paradox: have you ever felt like you were being watched, not by a person, but by reality itself? That strange, unshakable feeling that something, some unseen force, is aware of you? This is the reality that watches you back paradox, a concept that suggests our universe isn't just something we observe, it observes us too. Some scientists propose that reality may not fully exist until it is perceived, an idea known as the observer effect in quantum physics. In experiments, particles behave differently depending on whether or not they are being watched. But what if this principle applies on a much larger scale? What if reality isn't just passively existing, but is instead aware of you? Maybe the moments of déjà vu, the inexplicable coincidences and the eerie feelings of being watched aren't just in your head. Maybe reality itself is looking back at you. And here's the paradox. If reality is watching you, then who or what is? Behind its eyes? Level 101. The thought that thinks itself. Paradox. Have you ever had a thought that seemed to appear out of nowhere? A sentence forming in your mind that you never consciously created? A feeling? An idea? Something that didn't seem like yours? This is the thought that thinks itself paradox, the eerie idea that some thoughts exist independently of the thinker. We assume our thoughts belong to us, that they arise from our own brains. But what if certain thoughts exist on their own, like living entities drifting through consciousness, waiting for someone to catch them? Some philosophers have suggested that thoughts are not personal, but rather shared, that ideas float through the universe, waiting to be received. Could it be that some thoughts think themselves into existence, jumping from mind to mind? And here's the paradox. If a thought can think itself, then who, or what, is really doing the thinking? Level 102. The image that sees you. Paradox. You look at a painting, a photograph, a reflection in the mirror. But what if, in some strange way, it is looking back at you? This is the image that sees you paradox, the unsettling idea that what we observe may, in turn, be observing us. In quantum physics, observation changes reality. So what happens when we look at an image? Does it change in some imperceptible way? Does it record our presence, our thoughts, our gaze? Some ancient cultures believed that paintings and statues contained trapped souls. Some modern scientists believe that consciousness is not limited to biological beings. So if an image could see, what would it know about you? And here's the paradox. If an image observes you in the same way you observe it, then who is truly looking at who? Level 103. The object that is both here and not paradox. Imagine holding an object in your hand. You can feel its weight, its texture, its presence. But what if, at the same time, it wasn't actually there? This is the object that is both here and not paradox, a mind-bending contradiction where something can simultaneously exist and not exist. It's not just a philosophical concept, it has roots in quantum mechanics. In the famous Schrödinger's cat thought experiment, a cat in a box is both alive and dead until it is observed. Could it be that objects around us behave the same way, existing in multiple states at once? Think of an item you've lost. Keys, a phone, a book. You know it was there, and yet, when you look again, it's gone. But later, it reappears in the exact same spot. Did you simply overlook it, or was it existing in a state of flux, both present and absent at the same time? And here's the paradox. If objects can be in two states at once, then what is real? Is everything around us just a probability waiting to be confirmed? Level 104. The dream that can't be escaped. Paradox. You wake up from a dream, relieved to be back in reality. But what if you never truly woke up? What if you're still dreaming and just think you've escaped? This is the dream that can't be escaped. Paradox. The terrifying idea that you could be trapped in an endless loop of dreams. Many people have experienced false awakenings, moments where they believe they have woken up only to realize they're still dreaming. But what if every awakening was just another level of the dream? How would you know? What if the entire world around you was just part of a deeper dream? What if every memory, every person, every experience was just a construct within your own mind? Some philosophers suggest we can never be certain that we are awake, that consciousness itself may be part of an endless illusion. And here's the paradox. If you can't prove you're awake, then is there ever an escape? Or are you still dreaming? Right now, Level 105, the consciousness that never sleeps. Paradox. You close your eyes, you drift into unconsciousness. But what if some part of you never actually sleeps? This is the consciousness that never sleeps. Paradox. The unsettling idea that while your body rests, your awareness never truly stops. Scientists have discovered that during sleep, the brain remains active, processing information, forming memories, even solving problems. Some people experience lucid dreams, where they are aware that they are dreaming, maintaining consciousness even while asleep. But what if this goes deeper? What if some part of your consciousness is always awake, observing everything, even when you're not aware of it? Some people report experiencing sleep paralysis, a terrifying state where they are awake but unable to move. Others describe out-of-body experiences, as if their mind drifts away from their sleeping body. And here's the paradox. If part of your consciousness never sleeps, then are you ever truly unconscious? Or is there always a hidden part of you, watching, waiting, awake? Level 106, the paradox of the forgotten universe. What if there was once a universe that existed, one filled with life, stars, and entire civilizations, but it was completely forgotten, not just by people, but by time itself? This is the paradox of the forgotten universe, an unsettling thought experiment where a universe could once have been real, but through some mysterious event, it was erased from history without a trace. No records, no memories, not even a ghostly remnant of its existence. If a universe vanishes without anyone to remember it, did it ever really exist at all? Think about your own memories. There are things from your past that you no longer recall, events you once lived through but can no longer access. But what if this phenomenon happened on a cosmic scale? What if entire worlds, galaxies, and dimensions have come and gone, and we simply have no way of knowing? Scientists theorize that our universe might not be the first one to exist. The idea of a cyclical universe suggests that new universes could be born from the death of old ones. But what if one of those previous universes disappeared so completely that not even a fundamental law of physics remembers it? And here's the paradox. If something once existed but is completely forgotten, can we ever prove it was real? Or is reality only what we remember? Level 107, the loop that was never broken. Paradox. Imagine you're stuck in a loop, reliving the same events over and over. You search for a way out, a way to break free. But what if the loop was never broken, and never will be? This is the loop that was never broken. Paradox, an eerie concept suggesting that time might be trapped in an eternal cycle, endlessly repeating itself without change. Some theories propose that the universe itself could be caught in a time loop, where every Big Bang is simply a reset of the same reality over and over. But if that's true, then what does it mean for you? Have you already lived this life before? Are you destined to experience the same moments infinitely, with no way of escaping? The déjà vu you feel, the strange familiarity of places you've never been. Could these be remnants of past loops, echoes of a cycle you can never break? And here's the paradox. If the loop was never broken, how would you ever know? Could this very moment be one you've already lived countless times? Level 108, the dream that creates reality, paradox. You wake up from a dream. Everything felt real, the sights, the sounds, the emotions, but then a strange thought occurs. What if this reality is just another dream? This is the dream that creates reality paradox, a mind-twisting idea that suggests reality itself might not be the foundation of existence, but instead a product of something greater, an infinite dream. Some ancient philosophies, like those found in Eastern traditions, propose that what we call reality is simply a dream within a larger consciousness. What if, when you dream, you're not just imagining things, but actually creating them? Think about it. In your dreams, you construct entire worlds, characters, and experiences. Your mind generates light, sound, even the sensation of touch. If a dream can feel so real, then what makes reality any different? Some scientists have even speculated that our universe could be a simulation, akin to a dream generated by an advanced consciousness. If that's true, then what is the dream, and who is the dreamer? And here's the paradox. If reality is just a dream, then what happens when the dreamer wakes up? Level 109. The thought that exists outside time. Paradox. Imagine a thought that was never created, never influenced by time, yet somehow always existed. It was never formed inside a brain, never spoken, never even considered, but it is. This is the thought that exists. Outside time paradox, a mind-bending idea that suggests thoughts might not be bound by time the way we assume. Normally, a thought has a beginning and an end. You think of something, process it, and move on. But what if there was a thought that was eternal, a concept that was always there, even before the first mind existed to think it? Some theories and philosophy suggest that certain ideas, like mathematical truths, exist independently of human perception. The number pi would still exist even if no one knew about it. But what if thoughts themselves could exist outside of time? Imagine a message floating in the void, waiting for the right moment to be received by a mind. What if inspiration, intuition, or even déjà vu is actually just a thought that was never created but always existed? And what if time itself only exists because of thought? And here's the paradox. If a thought has no beginning or end, then is it truly a thought? Or is it something greater? Level 110. The reality that is only a thought paradox. Close your eyes and picture a world. Imagine the trees, the sky, the people walking by. It feels real, doesn't it? But now, consider this. What if our reality is just like that? A thought, existing in a vast, unknowable consciousness? This is the reality that is only a thought paradox, a theory that questions whether our universe is truly physical, or if everything we experience is simply an idea, a projection from a larger mind. In some philosophical traditions, reality is seen as an illusion, a dreamlike experience that exists only because consciousness observes it. Quantum mechanics even hints at this possibility. Particles behave differently when observed, as if reality itself only exists when it is being thought about. If reality is just a thought, then where does that thought come from? And if we are part of it, are we merely extensions of someone else's imagination? And here's the paradox. If reality is just a thought, then who or what is doing the thingy? Level 111, the self that is split? Paradox. You wake up one morning and feel different. You remember being yourself, but something seems off. Then you realize you're not just one person anymore. You are two. This is the self that is split paradox, a concept that suggests identity is not a singular, unbreakable thing, but something that can divide, multiply, or even coexist in multiple forms. Some psychological theories suggest that our sense of self is an illusion, merely a combination of memories and experiences held together by the brain. But what if that self could split into separate, independent identities? Imagine a version of you who remembers things differently, has different desires, or even experiences the world in a completely alien way, all while still being you. This idea plays a role in thought experiments about teleportation and cloning. If you were duplicated perfectly down to your last thought, which one would be the real you? And if both versions continued living, would they still be the same person? And here's the paradox. If the self can be split, then was it ever truly whole to begin with? Level 112. The observer that exists in all places. Paradox. Imagine a single consciousness that is everywhere at once. It sees through your eyes, through mine, through the eyes of every living being at the same time. It is the ultimate observer, aware of all things, in all places, simultaneously. This is the observer that exists in all places paradox, a concept that challenges our understanding of individuality and perception. Normally, we assume that each person has a unique, separate consciousness. But what if consciousness itself is not limited to individuals? What if there is only one observer, one mind, experiencing reality from every possible perspective at once? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that observation itself affects the physical world. The famous double-slit experiment shows that particles behave differently when they are observed. But what if there was an observer that was always watching in all places, at all times? If such an observer exists, then does free will truly exist? If everything is being seen at once, does anything ever go unnoticed? And if we are all part of the same observer, then is individuality just an illusion? And here's the paradox. If an observer exists in all places, then where is it really? Level 113. The final thought that never ends. Paradox. What is the last thought you will ever have? Will it be peaceful, panicked, or a sudden flash of realization? Now, imagine that thought continuing forever. This is the final thought that never ends paradox. a disturbing concept that questions whether consciousness can ever truly stop. In many beliefs, death is seen as the end of awareness. But what if, at the moment of death, your final thought stretched on for eternity? Time itself may cease to exist for you, but in your last instant of awareness, you might remain trapped in an endless loop of that single thought. This paradox raises unsettling questions. If consciousness is tied to the brain, does it stop the moment the brain stops? Or is there something beyond biology, something that keeps a last thought frozen in time? And here's the paradox. If a final thought never ends, then was it ever truly final? Level 114. The sound that was never made. Paradox. Close your eyes and imagine a sound, a melody so haunting, so strange, that no human has ever heard it before. Now ask yourself, if a sound is never heard, does it even exist? This is the sound. That was never made paradox, an idea that questions whether sound can exist without perception. We know that sound is simply vibrations moving through the air, but what if there was a sound that had all the qualities of real sound, except it was never actually produced? A song that was never played, a voice that was never spoken, a noise that should have existed but didn't. In quantum mechanics, reality is shaped by observation. If something isn't seen, it exists in a state of uncertainty. Could the same apply to sound? Could there be an entire universe of unheard, unspoken sounds, ones that exist in theory but have never been perceived? And here's the paradox. If a sound is never made, yet still exists, then what is it really? Level 115. The dream that exists in multiple realities. Paradox. Imagine waking up from a dream only to realize that the same dream is being experienced by someone else at the exact same moment. Now, what if that dream didn't just belong to two people, but to infinite versions of you across multiple realities? This is the dream that exists in multiple realities paradox, a mind-bending concept that questions whether dreams are personal, experiences or shared events occurring in parallel dimensions. Some people report experiencing the same dream multiple times, as if they are revisiting a place that exists outside of time. Others claim to share identical dreams with friends, family, or even strangers. Could this mean that dreams are not just products of the subconscious, but windows into different realities? In the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, every possible version of reality exists simultaneously. If this is true, then is it possible that dreams are echoes of events happening in alternate universes? Could they be a way for consciousness to momentarily slip between realities? And here's the paradox. If a dream exists in multiple realities at once, then which reality does it truly belong to? Level 116. The memory that doesn't belong to you. Paradox. Have you ever had a memory that felt real, but you know it never happened to you? A place you've never been, a face you've never seen, or an experience that belongs to someone else? This is the memory that doesn't belong to you. Paradox. A phenomenon that challenges the nature of personal identity and the reliability of memory itself. Many people report memories of things they never lived through. Some call it déjà vu. Others believe it's proof of past lives. But what if these misplaced memories aren't mistakes? What if they're borrowed? Fragments of someone else's, consciousness slipping into your own? Neurologists suggest that false memories can be created when the brain fills in gaps in perception. But what if that explanation isn't enough? Could it be possible that we occasionally access the experiences of other people, or even alternate versions of ourselves in different timelines? And here's the paradox. If a memory doesn't belong to you, then who does it belong to? Level 117. The paradox of the self that was never born. Who are you? More importantly, who would you be if you had never been born? This is the paradox of the self that was never born, a thought experiment that challenges the very concept of existence. If you had never been born, then who would be thinking this thought right now? Would someone else exist in your place? Would the world be the same? just without you? Or would your absence create a ripple effect that changes everything? In quantum physics, particles can exist in multiple states at once until observed. Could the same apply to consciousness? Is it possible that there are versions of reality where you were never born, and yet somehow you still exist within them? And here's the paradox. If you were never born, then who is asking the question? Level 118. The thought that creates a new universe paradox. What if every thought you have isn't just contained in your mind, but instead gives birth to an entirely new reality? This is the thought that creates a new universe paradox, a concept that suggests consciousness itself might be the ultimate force behind creation. Every decision you make splits reality into two, one where you made one choice and another where you made the opposite. But what if this goes beyond decisions? What if simply thinking of something, an idea, a scenario, an impossible world, creates a universe where that thought is real? In quantum physics, the observer effect suggests that reality is shaped by observation. But what if it's even deeper than that? What if thinking about something is observing it in another realm? Could imagination be the blueprint for entire realities? And here's the paradox. If every thought creates a universe, then where did this universe come from? Was it simply a thought in someone else's mind? Dara's level 119. The time that loops but never repeats paradox. Imagine reliving a moment over and over again. But every time it happens, it's different. The same event occurs, yet the details change. It's a loop, but one that never repeats. This is the time that loops but never repeats paradox, a contradiction that challenges our very understanding of time. In many time loop stories, events repeat exactly as they happened before. But what if time loops exist where history bends slightly with each cycle? What if the past is always returning, but it's never quite the same? Could this explain déjà vu, the feeling that something has happened before, yet you know it's new? What if déjà vu isn't just a trick of the mind, but evidence that time is looping, subtly shifting reality each time? And here's the paradox. If time is looping, but never repeating, then is it truly a loop at all? Level 120. The final paradox, the one that contains them. All, this is it. The last paradox, the one that explains everything and nothing. The final paradox, the one that contains them all, is the ultimate contradiction, the idea that every paradox is connected, forming an infinite web where one impossibility leads to another. What if every paradox we've explored, time loops, forgotten identities, dream realities, are all part of the same greater mystery? What if the nature of existence itself is a paradox, and the more we try to understand it, the less we truly know? Here's the final question. If this paradox contains all others, then is this paradox also contained within itself? And if so, is this the paradox that never ends?